Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes po, sir.
All right. I'm assuming that since they have already changed yung courses ng mga psychometricians from theories of personality to developmental psychology, I'm just assuming now that all of the participants here are psychology board exam takers. Am I correct? Or meron pa din po ba ditong psychometrician takers? Is everyone here or are yeah, tama. Is everyone here psychology board exam takers class? RPsy si Valencia, si Joyce, RPsy din. Okay, Sarah, RPsy. How about the others? We have one no RPM, si Joy, another one from RPM. Okay. Meron ding RP. So, tatlong RPM, no? We have four. All right, no? So, in short, halo-halo pa rin. So, it's still no class. Those who are willing, RPM takers who are willing to join, who are willing to listen still, may still do so. I believe no, na at some point, you will also still be able to get something from this particular course. Lalong-lalo na in the board exam, may mga questions doon na nag-overlap, no? So I wanted you guys to actually take note of that. Now, let's already proceed. So just a moment. All right. Everyone, could you already see my presentation? Just to verify. All right, good. Now, at this particular rate, no, if I will just go back on the top part of our presentation, again, no, so just a very short review. I wanted you guys to take note that last time we have already finished Filipino psychology, and right now we are already to proceed with learning theories, starting, of course, with Skinner. No? Now, at this particular aspect, I believe that every one of us are very much familiar who B.F. Skinner is. After all, isa siya sa mga pinakapamilyar na kilalang tao or theorist when it comes to behaviorism, no, or learning psychology on that particular aspect. So, in line with that, I wanted you guys to take note the theory of B.F. Skinner, no, or in reality mas kilala sa pangalang Burroughs Frederick Skinner on that particular aspect, no? So, according to Skinner in 1953, all we need to know in order to describe and explain behavior is that let me repeat. All we need to know in order to describe and explain behavior is that actions followed by good outcomes are likely to recur and actions followed by bad outcomes are less likely to recur. Just a moment, class. So at that particular rate, no, in this particular definition alone, you guys are very much already aware what are these particular good outcomes or followed by good outcomes or bad outcomes na pinoperty ni B.F. Skinner. No, at least at that particular point, dapat po familiar na tayo kung ano yung pinoperty niya because we have already tackled this, of course, when we were still in the undergraduate level. No, kahit po yung mga MS Psychology students natin dito or MS Psychology graduates or MA graduates, they are already very much familiar kung ano ba yung mga pinag-uusapan natin na yun. And later on, of course, we will further discuss them. No, so in a nutshell, no, this is what B.F. Skinner is talking about when we are focusing mainly on his particular theory. Now, what are the precursors of Skinner's scientific behaviorism? I wanted you guys to take note of E.L. Thorndike's law of effect, wherein, lakihan lang natin, it might be too small for some. wherein he stated that responses followed by a satisfier tend to be learned, a concept that anticipated Skinner's use of positive reinforcements to shape behavior. So that is the law of effect of Edward Lee Thorndike on that particular aspect, which is, of course, something that B.F. Skinner utilized as well to identify itong theory na sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. Hindi po ba? So at this particular aspect, when we say good outcomes, we already know that we are talking about positive reinforcements. And when we talk about bad outcomes, therefore, the opposite one, we are talking about now the negative reinforcements. So I hope at that particular rate, when you have already read, when I read with you guys, the theory of B.F. Skinner, dapat naisip nyo na this is about reinforcements. No, this is about positive and negative reinforcements. Yung pinag-uusapan ni Sir Jade dito. Another precursor of Skinner's scientific behaviorism is John Watson. He argued that psychology must deal with control and prediction of behavior, and behavior is the basic data of scientific psychology, not introspection, conscious, or the mind. Ano ang pinapatamaan niya dito, class? Ano pinapatamaan dito ni John Watson? Dito sa last bullet niya? What particular grand theory? Psychodynamic? Pwede? No? But mainly, aside from psychodynamic, what else? Not necessarily humanistic. Ano yung mainly nagfo-focus doon sa covert functioning ng isang tao. There you go, Ms. De Jesus. Cognitivism, hindi po ba? Because cognitivism mainly believes, or cognitive psychology mainly believes that that all of our behavior basically is happening in our brain. No, yung belief system natin, all of those particular aspect affects our behavior. Tama rin kayo when you said psychodynamic, no? Because according to Sigmund Freud, ang pinaka-target niya is to bring the unconscious into consciousness. So all of these particular aspects, ladies and gentlemen, are happening within us. No, but class just to verify with you guys, it is really mainly the cognitivism yung dinedebunk ng behaviorism. Okay, tatandaan niyo po yan kasi according to John Watson, again ang pinakagusto natin para makita natin yung growth ng isang tao, para makita natin yung development ng isang tao, ang basis natin is the behavior, the overt behavior, the behavior na nakikita, na measure natin. And not those behavior that we cannot see, such as the cognitive processes, the thinking, how we rationalize things. Not those things. Kasi hindi naman natin daw na may measure yun, according to John Watson and according to the other behaviorism theorists. Naiintindihan po? Nagigets? Class, naiintindihan? Okay, good. Now let's proceed. The scientific behaviorism philosophy of science, I wanted you guys to take note of this. The purpose of science is to predict and to control. Again, behaviorism, its purpose is to predict and to control, particularly the overt behavior, the things or the behavior that we can directly see, that we can directly observe. It concentrates almost exclusively on observable behavior and avoids speculations about hypothetical constructs. So let me highlight this last line. It avoids speculations about hypothetical constructs. Again, patama po yan sa mga naunang theories, particularly against psychodynamic and cognitivism. So all of those particular aspects are mainly hypothetical. Yung mga sinasabi ng cognitivism, yung sinasabi ng psychodynamic, all of those are hypothetical. Why? Because we cannot measure them. We can only theorize them. We can only hypothesize on them, but we cannot measure them. Dahil nga hindi rin naman natin sila nakikita in the first place. Yung archetypes na yan, yung drives na yan, yung anxiety na yan within us, all of those past childhood experiences, all of those particular aspects are simply covert behavior. We cannot see them, we cannot measure them. Therefore, we need to avoid them according to behaviorism. And what we should only focus are those behavior that we can see and measure and observe. Next is determinist, rejects the notion of free will. No? Kaninong notion ba yung free will? Class. What grand theory can we attach free will? Correct, humanistic. So again, at this particular rate, dinedebunk niya rin or pinapatamaan niya rin yung humanism more than or aside from psychodynamic and cognitivism. Next, environmentalists emphasize the primacy of environmental influences on one's behavior. No, and not necessarily on one's genetics. Although yes, they acknowledge it, pero diba, in reality, we always see environment and genes as 50-50. There's a 50% influence that genes gives us, and there's another 50% influence that environment gives us. However, if you are a pure behaviorist psychologist or professional, the tendency is for you to really mainly give attention on how the environment influences you as an individual. So kindly take note of that. Next, task of scientific inquiry to establish functional relationships between experimenter-controlled stimulus and organism's response, which is later on we will further discuss. Lalong-lalo na kapag pinag-usapan na natin yung mga reinforcements na yan. Now, aside from that, the empty organism approach, may tinatawag na ganon, wherein there's no presumptions about internal entities. Again, this is something that is against the ideologies of psychodynamic and cognitivism and so on and so forth. No, so we see an individual, an organism as an empty organism. No, because we mainly base our observation and our behavior on the overt behavior or manifestations of the individual and not on the covert ones. Now, let's proceed. Characteristics of science. There are three principles of characteristics. Lakihan ko lang. Three principles of characteristics. We have its findings are cumulative. What do we mean by that? The amount of knowledge today is greater than it was years ago. It's cumulative because lalong-lalo na, this gives heavy emphasis on behaviorism because behaviorism is highly backed up with scientific evidences, no, with empirical data. Like what I said, we only give value on those that we can readily observe and quantify, those behavior that we can quantify. When we say quantifiable behavior that we can put into numbers, no. So in short, mas makakapag-produce ang isang behaviorist theorist as compared to a cognitive one or as compared to a theorist that is highly basing his theory or approaches into psychodynamic, no, lalong-lalo na yung dalawang yon mainly focuses pa naman sa covert behavior. So when it comes to behaviorism, we observe overt behavior, mas makakapag-produce tayo ng research at ng studies. That's why the findings are cumulative. Next, it rests on an attitude that values empirical observation. This is something that I have already discussed kanina din. This is in line with the first bullet, that in behaviorism, we focus or we can actually acquire, we can actually create more theories or more studies, no, on that particular aspect. That's why we are backed up with empirical data. When I say empirical data, for those who doesn't know, these are evidences or data that is based on studies, observation, measurements, quantifiable data, and so on and so forth. Third, it searches for order and lawful relationship. What do we mean by that? No, we follow scientific method highly in behaviorism. No, prediction, control, description, and so on and so forth. That's why we follow order and lawful relationships here. We also have a single subject design in behaviorism. Large numbers of subjects are not necessary in line with that particular aspect. In short, when we conduct research, it's not necessary na kumuha tayo ng 100 or 300 participants, no? Statistical comparisons of group means not necessary as well, because this is not an experimental design that most likely we are experiencing or doing in behaviorism. A single subject provides valid and replicable results. Let me highlight this particular bullet because that's the main agenda of this particular slide. No, again, it's not necessary for us to have 300 participants just for us to claim that our results are valid and reliable. Again, just to emphasize, according to the third bullet, a single subject provides valid and replicable results. Let's say, for example, Baby Albert, the famous Baby Albert experiment. Are you familiar with Baby Albert? Little Albert, I mean, mas kilala siya sa mga libro as Little Albert. Are you familiar with Little Albert? Kasi kapag di siya kayong familiar sa kanya, ewan ko na lang class, no? Little Albert is an infamous experiment because there are a lot of issues revolving that particular experiment, mainly ethical ones. So you see, nag-iisa lang naman yung experiment na yon. Si Little Albert lang din naman, iisa lang din yung subject na ginawa. But as time passed by, the experiment had been replicated and up until now it's being used as an example to teach in the educational setting. No, so kindly take note of that. So that's what I mean when I was talking about the third bullet. Next, it requires sufficient data collected under well-controlled experimental conditions. No, so most likely when we say under controlled experimental conditions, we are talking about laboratories. No, wherein all extraneous variables are most likely controlled and eliminated. Next, statistics obscure individual responses and also differences. Now, we have the first classical conditioning, and later on we will be talking about operant conditioning as well. I believe you are very much familiar with classical conditioning. Now, question, who is the proponent of classical conditioning? Comment section, please. Just a review, who's the proponent of classical conditioning? Nako. Oh, yung iba, good. It's Pavlov. All right, Ivan Pavlov. So he's a proponent of classical conditioning, and I believe you guys are very much aware already of what is classical conditioning, the infamous experiment about the dog, the food, and the bell, hindi ba? So just quickly, I want you to look at this particular image, no? Because this is a summary of the classical conditioning of Ivan Pavlov, wherein at first, no, this is an unconditioned stimulus and unconditioned response. Yung food as the unconditioned stimulus and the salivation of the dog, yung paglalaway ng aso, as the unconditioned response. And of course, Ivan Pavlov have seen that and want to replicate the response, which is the salivation, with a new stimulus. No? So, kung mapapasin niyo dito, before conditioning, the fork or the tuning fork or the bell sa mga ibang libro, no, yung bell or yung tuning fork, it is considered as the neutral stimulus because there's no particular salivation that is happening. There's no particular conditioning pa na nangyayari. Now, ang ginagawa ni Ivan Pavlov para makondisyon yung aso doon sa tuning fork, every time i-ring niya yung tuning fork, misconception, yes, you may do so. Get well soon, please. All right, going back, in the third, during the conditioning, ang ginagawa ni Pavlov dito is that every time, iriring niya yung fork, pinapakita niya o pinapresent niya yung food. So that is always a match. Magkatabi palagi yung tuning fork sa yung pagkain, all right? And of course, as time passed by, nagre-respond yung aso doon sa combination ng tuning fork and food. With salivation. Paulit-ulit ginagawa yun ni Ivan Pavlov, paulit-ulit ilang araw, ilang linggo, ilang buwan, hanggang sa na-condition na yung aso that whenever the dog hears the tuning fork, even without the presence of the food, the dog salivates. No, and this is very much similar when if you guys have a pet dog or a pet cat in your home, that is very much similar. Na lalapit sila sa inyo, wagging their tails or whatsoever, whenever they hear the sound ng lalagyanan ng pagkain nila. No? O kaya naman whenever they hear the sound of the machine of your car, tapos 'di ba, papasok kayo sa kwarto or papasok kayo sa house ninyo, andun na sila sa door naghihintay. No, because that is an indication they were already conditioned na oh, yun yung sound ng machine ng kotse. Andiyan na yung amo ko o yung boss ko or whatsoever. No, that's why they will immediately wait on the door. No, so this is classical conditioning for everyone's information. So kindly take note of these particular aspects. Although this is very basic, no? Napaka-basic niyan. Now, moving forward, we have operant conditioning. Now, who is the proponent of operant conditioning at this rate? Comment section, please. Proponent of operant conditioning. All right. Skinner, correct. Now, para mas maalala ninyo ha, you may use, this is my personal acronyms for classical and operant conditioning and also their proponents. So might as well just share it with you guys. PCSO. No, PCSO. 'Di ba it's a government institution yung PCSO dito sa Philippines. However, in terms of behaviorism, PCSO para lang mas maalala ninyo, P stands for Pavlov, C classical, S Skinner, O operant, PCSO. No, so again ha, PCSO, Pavlov, classical, Skinner, operant. Para lang maalala ninyo properly or mabilis. Okay. Now, when we talk about operant conditioning, reinforcement is used to increase the probability that a given behavior will actually recur. Dito papasok, ladies and gentlemen, yung sinasabi mismo ni Skinner doon sa theory niya, balikan natin kung ano yung theory ni Skinner. Ayan good outcomes, and also, let me bold that one out, and also bad outcomes. Yan yung sinasabi mismo ni Skinner doon sa theory po niya. All right, so kindly take note of that. Now, in line with that particular aspect, let's go back in operant conditioning. No, there are three essential factors in operant conditioning: the antecedent environment and also the behavior that takes place, the behavior or response, and also the consequences that which follows the behavior. Meron bang kasunod to? Wala. Okay. Now, I will deal with that later on. Now, in line with that, if Pavlov had an experiment with the dog, si operant conditioning, si Skinner, anong hayop or anong animal yung ginamit niya sa experiment niya? He placed what animal in the cage? Correct, Valencia. Rat, no? Rat lang to begin with. Ang alam ko isang daga lang yun eh. Okay. Now, on that particular experiment, just to give you a brief background for those who doesn't know yet, in that experiment, he placed a rat in a cage. Now, in each side of the cage, there's a lever. No? Sabihin natin on the right side, there's the first lever. The rat got curious, pressed down the first lever, and got electrocuted. So every time class, that the rat will press down the first layer on the first lever on the right side of the cage, the rat will be electrocuted. Masasaktan yung daga. And that represents what? What kind of reinforcement? If the rat will be punished, experience pain every time he presses or every time it presses the first lever, that is an example of negative reinforcement. You are punished, and as a result, what will happen to the behavior? If you receive negative reinforcement, you got punished, what will happen to the behavior? It will lessen, correct. So yun yung nangyari. Ang nangyari ngayon, nag-decrease na yung tendency ng daga to press down the first lever. Because every time the rat press down the first lever, it will be punished. Next, on the left side of the box or the left side of the cage, there's the second lever. And the rat pressed down the second lever, and every time it presses down the second lever, a pellet or a food comes out. So the food for the rat is something considered what? It is something reinforcing. As a result, it is considered a positive reinforcement. Di ba? It is a reward, no? Kasi nga maganda yun eh. Satisfaction yun sa kanya, no? It will satisfy the need to eat, the hunger, no? So on that particular note, as a result, what will happen to the behavior of the rat? Will it decrease as well? Correct. It will now increase. So, ladies and gentlemen, therefore, si B.F. Skinner, he landed on the conclusion that if a behavior is punished, it will decrease. No, the frequency of the behavior will decrease. But if the behavior is rewarded, the behavior will increase in terms of frequency. So that's the generic or that's the basic idea of B.F. Skinner in terms of his particular experiment. So I hope that is clear with you guys. Now let's proceed. Under operant conditioning, may tinatawag na shaping, no? It is a procedure where the experimenter and environment reward behavior through successive approximations, no? So ano ba yung successive approximations? Lakihan ko lang ito ha for everyone's ano. Ayan. Successive approximations are a gradual shaping of final complex set of behavior, no? Teaching children to put on clothes. So, paano siya ginagawa? First, dapat andito to. Ayan. First, reward gross approximations, like putting sleeves on. So, yung kada step, no? First step, let's say for example, unbutton the polo. Once you unbutton the polo, you will get a reward. No? So, put the polo, ipasok mo yung arms mo doon sa sleeves ng polo. That's the second step, another reward. Once you have put your arms in the holes of the sleeves of the polo, you unbutton each button. Tama ba? you button na lang. You button the polo. So, that's the third step. So, you again put a reward. Okay? So that is shaping, no? So may mga step-by-step process ka, and each step of that particular complex process, you actually reward the client or reward the individual. All right? So that's how successive approximations or that's how shaping works. Okay? So kindly take note of that. We also have under shaping, we also have operant discrimination. Not all behaviors in the environment are reinforced. Discrimination is the ability to know which is reinforcing and which is not. And discrimination is not an ability that people possess, but a result of their reinforcement history. So be mindful of this particular aspect as well, the operant discrimination. Because at the end of the day, Again ha, at the end of the day, we do not want a person or a child to actually be dependent on the reinforcements. Baka mamaya lahat ng gawin ng bata, ine-expect niya, ire-reinforce mo. No? So that's why we need operant discrimination on that particular aspect. We need to instill to the children or to the person na ginagawa natin ng operant conditioning na not all behaviors in the environment or not all behavior na gawin ng taong ito will be reinforced. Next, stimulus generalization, a response to a similar environment in the absence of previous reinforcement. So kahit nawala na yung kahit nawala na yung kauna-unahang yung stimulus condition stimulus, kahit nawala na yung condition stimulus, ginagawa pa rin ng tao yung behavior or ginagawa pa rin ng hayop yung behavior na similar doon sa original stimulus. No, so that is generalization. A very good example here is Baby Albert or Little Albert. Hindi ba sa libro, no, in the books, Little Albert wala siyang takot sa wala siyang takot sa daga. White rat yung ginamit sa libro or ginamit sa experiment. Little Albert was presented with white rat, but Little Albert did not receive or did not manifest any behavior. Wala, hindi po ba? On that particular aspect, takot si Little Albert sa loud sounds. He's scared with loud sounds. And as a result, ano ginawa ni Watson? Ano ginawa ni Watson? Every time ipapakita yung puting daga, sasabayan ng loud sound, loud gong. So as a result, si Little Albert umiiyak tuloy, no? It's like you're inflicting trauma, kaya nga maraming ethical considerations yung Little Albert experiment na yan. Now, on that particular aspect, as time passed by, Little Albert developed stimulus generalization. Na kahit nakakakita siya ng hindi lang white rat, kahit nga white fur or white rabbit, the Little Albert immediately cries. So that is stimulus generalization. Now, kailan natin masasabi na stimulus, na pwede siyang stimulus discrimination? Stimulus discrimination to if Little Albert only reacts to white rat. Kapag nakakita siya ng white rabbit or white fur, kahit basta fur no na puti, kahit hindi siya living object, Little Albert will not cry. That is discrimination. Okay? That is discrimination. Is that clear? Gets na ba yung discrimination generalization? I hope that's clear, ha? So let's proceed. Now, in terms of punishment and reinforcement, it can be both positive and also negative. Ang tatandaan nyo lang dito palagi, no? Again ha, ang tatandaan nyo lang dito palagi, class, is that when it's reinforcing, that the purpose, we're talking about the purpose, if it's reinforcement or punishment. If we do reinforcement, we want to increase the behavior. And when we do punishment, we want to decrease the behavior. Now, kapag naman positive or negative, it's most likely the presence of the stimulus. That's it. Presence of stimulus. Kapag positive siya, you provide or you give something. Kapag negative siya, you take away something. Okay? Presence of stimulus ang pinag-uusapan natin kapag positive, negative. Kapag naman reinforcement and punishment, it's the purpose of the stimulus. Nagigets? So kapag positive reinforcement, you give something to increase the behavior. Kapag negative reinforcement, you take away something to increase the behavior. Kapag positive punishment, you give something to decrease the behavior. But if it's negative punishment, you take away something to decrease the behavior. Nagigets? Nagigets? All right, ha? For example, meron bang sample dito? Wala. For example, may isang bata, no, pinagalitan kasi nga ang dumi-dumi ang kalat-kalat niya, no. So nagkakalat, yun na lang, nagkakalat siya. Nagkakalat. Paano bang kalat to? He throws away or ano ba? There is an excessive, no? There is an excessive behavior of the child na kapag naglalaro siya, hindi niya nililigpit all the time yung ano niya. Saglit. Parang mali yun, parang mali. Okay, there's a child na laging nagmumura, ganun na lang. Always say bad words, no? So ang ginawa ng teacher, no, ang ginawa ng teacher, binigyan siya ng house chores or binigyan siya ng school chores, no? So as every time na every time na papauwi na yung buong klase, itong bata na to na laging nagmumura, hindi mo na makakauwi. Binigyan ng school chores, siya yung maglilinis ng classroom, siya yung mag-erase ng blackboard, no? As a result for the kid to be taught a lesson not to actually say bad words in the classroom. So what's that? Ano yon? Correct. Positive punishment. You give you give the school chores to the student as a form of punishment with the purpose to decrease the saying of bad word behavior. Yan. Good. Nagigets na? Nagigets po? Okay, good. How about this? May bata, studious. No, nakita nung nanay, oh studious, nakakuha ng good grades kasi nag-aaral. Tapos sinabihan ng nanay, oh sige, if you will get good marks or good grades, I will give you iPhone 14 Pro Max 1 terabyte. Aba, may ganun pa, no? I will give you iPhone 14 Pro Max 1 terabyte if you will be cum laude when you graduate kasi fourth year na yung student. So ano yun? Positive reinforcement. Good. So now, that's the thing. Ngayon alam nyo na. Okay. So next. Both have been derived from natural consequences or human imposition, and both can control behavior either by design or by accident. So this is just a similarities between reinforcement and also punishment. Can this still be enlarged? Lakihan natin. Parang yun na yun. Okay. Now, what are the effects of punishment? No, it suppresses the behavior, meaning to say prevents people from behaving a particular manner, but does not teach appropriate behaviors. So that is punishment. You suppress the behavior because you're scared to be punished. That's the basic aspect, or that's the basic idea of effects of punishment in terms of suppression. It must be delivered immediately and consistently. No? And conditioning of a negative feeling, meaning to say it creates a negative emotion like fear and anxiety. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina why most likely when you deliver a punishment, people or the children or yung mga tao na binibigyan nyo ng punishment, most likely is to suppress the behavior only. Because that is out of the fear of suppression, out of the negative emotion of fear and also anxiety. Behavior is only associated with being punished, and no learning or positive instruction is actually being taken care of or actually being delivered. As what written, ladies and gentlemen, on the third bullet, it does not teach appropriate behaviors. Now, moving forward, it may result in negative side effects, such as undesirable behaviors may be learned through modeling, such as aggression. And spread of its effects. What do we mean by that? Anything associated with the stimulus may be suppressed or avoided. Usage of defense mechanisms to avoid pain or anxiety. And this is something that as future psychometricians and also as future psychologists, and not only that, as future parents, no? As future parents, common dito sa Pilipinas yung papaluin mo yung anak mo, bibigay mo ng punishment, no, kapag makulit or whatsoever, masisigawan mo. Be careful, no, because these negative effects of punishment can actually be experienced by anyone, no? Lalong-lalo na yung paggamit ng defense mechanism, alam nyo naman, as a this is in line with my practice as a practicing psychologist. Ang dami-dami kong mga clients that ang main concern nila is still heavily rooted on how their parents treated them, on how they were punished when they were young. At kahit nasa mid-30s, nasa mid-40s na sila, hanggang ngayon, dala-dala pa rin nila yun na apektuhan yung trabaho nila, takot silang magsalita sa mga boss nila, no? Takot silang magsalita doon sa mga higher ups nila because again, nadadala nila yon, no, na parang bumabalik yung negative experiences nila na every time they try to speak up, napapagalitan sila ng mga parents nila, no? So again this is not only applicable sa inyo as professions but sa inyo din as future parents of your children. So be careful with the use of punishment. Ang dami-dami kong clients na ganun, class. So be careful. Next, conditioned and generalized reinforcers, no? When we say conditioned reinforcers, also called as secondary reinforcers, not by nature satisfying. So let's say, for example, when we say secondary reinforcers, we are talking about money. We are talking about the wants. Yun ang wants. Because when we say primary reinforcers, we are talking about our physiological needs. Mga bagay that will satisfy our physiological needs such as food, water, comfort, warmth, and of course sex, no, because sex is a sexual need, no. Now, when we talk about now generalized reinforcers, these are conditioned reinforcers associated with more than one primary reinforcer. No, so let's say, for example, 5 important generalized reinforcers are the following: attention, approval, affection, submission of others, and tokens. So yan yung mga yon. So you can try to take into account, no, kapag gagamit kayo ng reinforcers, ano ba yung maganda? Ano ba yung posible o ano ba yung possible na maaari yung magamit when you are utilizing reinforcers theoretically and also practically or in practice. Maganda na syempre sisimulan nyo sa primary reinforcers because yun yung kailangan talaga, no? But as time passed by, depending on the situation, you can also use the secondary reinforcers. Now, scheduling tayo. No? So we have what we so-called continuous schedule wherein the organism is reinforced for every response. That's continuous. Every response. No? So for example, every time na mag-uurong siya ng dishes, bibigyan niyo siya ng food. No? Something like that. On the other hand, we have what we so-called intermittent schedule wherein the organism reinforced at a particular time or amount of response, more efficient, resistant to extinction. Bakit, no? Yun yung tanong why it's more efficient and resistant to extinction? Why? Because class, when we do continuous schedule, when you reinforce every response of the person, what if tumigil ka sa pagbigay ng response? That is an indication or there is a huge possibility that the actual behavior will also end. No? Baka isipin ng tao na, okay, hindi na niya ako binibigyan ng reward, ititigil ko na rin tong behavior na to. No, ginagawa ko lang naman to para sa reward Because every time I do this, there's a reward. So continuous schedule is more prone to extinction as compared to intermittent schedule. I want you to take note of that, no? Now, under intermittent schedule, it can be by interval or by ratio. Let's first talk about interval. When we say interval, reinforcement occurs after a certain amount of time has passed. So time ang pinag-uusapan natin dito, oras. It can be fixed or variable interval. When we say fixed interval, reinforcement is presented after a fixed amount of time. Sabihin natin, every after 10 hours, I will reward you. Or every after 5 hours, I will reward you. Kahit ano, for example, you are for example, um, watering the plants. No, watering the plants. So you have the task to water the plants. So every 3 hours, I will reward you. Kahit regardless kung ilang plants yung nadiligan mo. Regardless Regardless how many plants you watered, no, I will reward you every 3 hours. That's fixed interval. Next, variable interval. Reinforcement is delivered on a random or variable time schedule. O, siguro 3 hours, re-rewardan kita. O, after 5 hours naman, re-rewardan kita ngayon. O, after 2 hours, re-rewardan kita. It depends. No, it depends. Random or variable time schedule. So, that's variable interval. Now, let's proceed to the other type of intermittent schedule, which is ratio schedule. Reinforcement occurs after a certain number of responses. So this time, responses yung hinahanap natin, not hour or not time. So we have fixed ratio, no? Reinforcement presented after a fixed number of responses. So for example, saying amen. No, saying amen. When the child says amen 10 times, every 10 times of saying amen, I will reward the child. No? So sa buong araw yon, sa buong araw, no? So sa isang buong araw, kapag 10 times nag-amen yung bata, reward. Okay? So that is by counting the number of responses. Ang variable ratio naman, reinforcement is given after every nth response on the average. So this is very much similar with variable interval na random or variable yung pagbibigay ng ratio, pagbibigay ng reward. So it's not necessarily fixed. So sabihin natin, same behavior, nagsabi ng amen yung bata ng 3 times this time, reward. Nagsabi yung bata ng after 3 times, nagsabi naman siya ng amen 7 times already, reward. After 7 times, nagsabi ulit siya ng amen ng 5 times, reward. So these are how we do schedules of reinforcement. So ang bottom line lang dito, aside from the technicality as well, I wanted you guys to take note yung extinction. No, kung ano yung pinakamabilis na ma-extinct or you're prone sa extinction at retention. Again between continuous and intermittent, mas prone sa extinction of behavior si continuous as compared kay intermittent. Is that clear? Klaro tayo dyan Okay, good. Ay, ito pala. Ito naman pala, no? Nagsasabi-sabi pa ako verbally. Okay, so please review this. No? Schedules of reinforcement, response rate, no? Take note of this Tapos lalong-lalo na ito yung sinasabi ko resistance to extinction. Screenshot nyo to. Pag-aralan nyo to, please. No, not pag-aralan, memorize. Memorize this. No? Paki-memorize po Lalong-lalo na ito yung resistance to extinction. So more resistant is variable ratio. So kapag gumagamit kayo ng variable ratio, most likely hindi makakalimutan or magre-retain sa tao yung behavior. Ang list is, for example, fixed ratio. The higher the ratio, the more resistant it is. The higher the ratio, the more resistant. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin nun, mas mataas yung interval ng ratio, mas okay. No, so for example, under fixed ratio, andito yan, every 5 times, pwede. Pero kung tataasan mo pa yung ratio, every 10 times, mas resistant yon. Next, fixed interval. The longer the interval, the more resistant it is. And variable interval, more resistant than fixed interval with same average interval. So kumpara natin sa fixed and variable, mas resistant si variable interval. Pero ang bottom line, no, commonly sa board exam, kailangan nyo lang alalahanin yung pinaka. Laging yung pinaka okay, pinaka hindi okay. Most likely sa board exam ganun ha. So ang tatandaan nyo lang talaga dito, most likely is the variable ratio. Siya yung pinaka-resistant sa lahat. Ang slot machine daw ba, variable ratio daw ba yon? Tignan natin ha. Ang variable ratio is, yes, slot machine. No, kasi slot machine, di ba? There's no specific, it's not based on time. It's not based on time. It is not, the slot machine doesn't also give you a reward based on a particular fixed number of responses. So hindi naman siya every 10 na baba mo ng slot o ng stick sa slot machine magkakaroon ng reward, 'di ba? Hindi naman. So it is variable ratio, the slot machine. Slot machine yan yung classic laging binibigay na example yan no? So kindly take note of that. Naiintindihan na po ba yung schedules of reinforcement? Nagigets ha? Okay, kasi maraming tao naguguluhan dyan. Okay, so extinction. What do we mean by this? It is the tendency of a previously acquired response to become progressively weaken upon non-reinforcement. So as time pass by, in general, no, bibilisan ko lang. As time pass by, hanggang sa hindi mo ginagawa yung reinforcement, as time pass by, nawawala, nagfe-fade yung behavior, yung condition response, hanggang sa matuluyan na siyang ma-extinct. No, it's just like learning a language. When you are in a foreign country for several months, then you can speak already their language because you are there. You are exposed in the environment. However, kapag umuwi ka sa Pilipinas, no, hindi ka na exposed doon sa accent nila, hindi ka na exposed sa language nila, mawawala, magfe-fade as time pass by yung language na natutunan mo. No, so I want you guys to take note of that. It's just like that on that particular aspect. Moving forward, we have the human organism. 3 forces shaping human behavior. What are these? Ano yung tatlong forces na ito? First is natural selection. Our behavior is shaped by the contingencies of survival, no? So behavior, sex and aggression, very Freudian, no, yung sex and aggression. Behaviors beneficial to human race or species tend to survive. So this is the first force, natural selection, no? Second is cultural evolution. Societies that evolve certain cultural practices, such as tool making and language, tends to survive. Modern tools and use of language currently shape the behavior, and socialities or societies whose members behave in a cooperative manner tends to survive. And last force is individual's history of reinforcement. So I wanted you guys to be mindful of these 3 forces. This is a factual notion. This is highly theoretical. Alam nyo naman kung napansin ninyo, class, that these particular forces are mainly based on one's environment. Kasi aware naman tayo, hindi ba, that when it comes to behaviorism, one of the significant factors talaga, let me just go back here. When it comes to behaviorism, alam nyo naman, hindi ba, that they are most likely environmentalist. Kaya kung mapapansin ninyo, when it comes to those 3 forces, we highly value or we highly give emphasis on these, no? For example, natural selection, cultural evolution, talking about societies, and so on and so forth. So all of these are mainly talking about environment, okay, and one's culture and tradition. So kindly take note of this. Now, what does behaviorism how does behaviorism see inner states? Which is in fact, alam nyo naman na Parang against nga sila sa mga covert ideas na yan, hindi ba? Now, Skinner recognized the existence of such inner stage as drives and self-awareness. Yun naman pala, no? At least on that particular aspect, he is very much respectful still even to acknowledge these inner drives na actually ina-advocate nila Freud ng mga psychodynamic theorists natin. However, he rejected the notion that they can explain behavior. Yun yung ayaw ni Skinner, no? So let me just put that as a red mark, no? Bakit? Why do you think Skinner rejects these kinds of notion? That these notions, that these inner drives actually rejects how it can actually explain one's behavior. Now, self-awareness, let's say, for example, humans are aware of themselves as part of their environment. They observe stimuli and are aware of themselves observing that stimuli. What else? Drives refer to the effects of deprivation and satiation, and thus are related to the probability of certain behavior. But they are not the causes of behavior. Ito yung mga reasoning ni Skinner, no? I-highlight ko lang ha para mas maano ninyo. Emotions can be accounted for the contingencies of survival and the contingencies of reinforcement. But like drives, they cannot or they do not cause one's behavior. Purpose and intention are physically felt stimuli within the organism and not mentalistic events responsible for the behavior. Okay, so kindly take note of that, ha? The thought is reinforcing but not a cause of behavior. So these are the basic reasons, yung basic reasoning ni B.F. Skinner on why he is saying that, or on why he is now trying to debunk psychodynamic and also cognitivism. Kasi di ba sa cognitivism, sinasabi natin that our thoughts, these particular thoughts, affects mainly our behavior. It produces that linkage or that chain effect, that domino effect that leads to our behavior. Sa psychodynamic naman, we have these drives and we have these needs. So these drives and needs manifests in our behavior for us to satisfy them. Yun yung sinasabi ng psychodynamic. Pero sabi ni Skinner, yes, they exist. Drives and needs exist, but they are not the cause of our behavior. Yun yung sinasabi ni B.F. Skinner. Yun yung point niya, yun yung rationale niya. Understood? Understood, class? That's highly theoretical, ha? Kindly take note of that. Now, what are complex behavior according to Skinner? Higher mental processes such as thinking, problem solving are covert behaviors taking place within the skin and not in the hypothetical mind. Thus, they are not amenable to reinforcements. Ayan, ha? So in short, yung higher mental processes, debunking, no, mainly debunking cognitivism theory. Creativity as a result of random or accidental behavior that happen to be rewarded. So, yan yung definition ng creativity ni Skinner. Hindi ba si Adler meron din sariling version ng creativity? No? So, ito yung definition of creativity ni Skinner. Unconscious behavior occurs when people no longer think about it because it has been suppressed through punishment. Ayun, may meron ng element ng behaviorism in the form of punishment. No, dreams. Oh, that's mainly cognitivism. Dreams are covert and symbolic forms of behavior that are subject to the same contingencies of reinforcement as any other behavior. Dreams are reinforcement because we can express in them fantasies which are normally punished when acted out. So you see, hinahaluan ni Skinner ng explanation through behaviorism point of view. Okay? And lastly, social behavior. Groups do not behave, only individuals do. People form societies because of history of reinforcement. History of reinforcement, particularly one of the forces that actually shapes human beings. So nakikita nyo, class, how Skinner injects notions of behaviorism in these highly psychodynamic and cognitivistic terminologies. Nakikita? Okay, I hope that is clear, ha? Okay, good. Now, control of human behavior. How do we control them? Social control, operant, describing contingencies, deprivation and satiation, physical restraints. Self-control, it can be done through physical restraints, physical aids such as tools, changing the environment, arranging the environment to allow escape from aversive stimulus, drugs, doing something else. That's how we control ourselves. Last two slides for Skinner, for Skinner only. The unhealthy personality, these are the counteracting strategies. No, social, lakihan lang natin ng saglit. Social control and self-control sometimes produce counteracting strategies and inappropriate behaviors. So when it comes to counteracting strategies, no, this talks about escape, revolt, and passive resistance. When we say escape, withdrawing from controlling agent either physically or psychologically. Another aspect of counteracting strategies is revolt, opposing against society. So you are like fighting against, no? Passive resistance, stubbornness, subtle, more irritating to controllers. So these are your counteracting strategies, okay? We also have inappropriate behavior on this particular aspect, result from self-defeating techniques of counteracting social control, or from unsuccessful attempts to at self-control. What are these? Inappropriate behavior such as taking drugs, no? Excessive vigorous behavior like make no sense in relation to a situation and maybe compulsive or restless kinds of behavior. No, mga bagay na hindi masyado pinag-iisipan, yung you are just simply acting out. Excessively restrained behavior such as passive forms of shyness and stubbornness. Blocking out reality, Sullivan's selective inattention. No, so that is Skinner's version of Sullivan's selective inattention. We have defective self-knowledge, no, self-deluding, and also self-punishment as inappropriate behavior as a form of unhealthy personality according to B.F. Skinner. So that's it, class, for B.F. Skinner. Is everything clear with B.F. Skinner, or are there any concerns, questions, or clarifications before I proceed? Thumbs up if everything is clear, please. All right. So, class, let's have 10-minute break. No, mahaba-haba kasi si Skinner. I'm assuming you guys are also a bit overwhelmed already. So let's have a 10-minute break before we proceed with Dollar and Miller. So on that particular note, it's already 9:08. Let's make it 9:10. No, so I'll see you guys at 9:20. So let's already proceed, no? So let's already proceed, class, and we are already under John Dollard and Neil Miller. If I may verify, are you guys familiar with Dollard and Miller? Familiar po ba kay Dollard and Miller? I see, no? Because it's okay, no? Because, Dollard and Miller is actually, how should I say this? Hindi naman talaga siya masyado inaaral undergraduate. No, in the undergraduate program, it's not commonly, you guys do not commonly encounter Dollard and Miller. That's why in this particular part, mas pang ano to eh, si Dollard and Miller mas pang ano to, RPsy takers or psychology board exam takers, no? But regardless, since halo yung class na to, may RPM tayo dito, at least you guys will be very much familiar as well with Dollard Miller on that particular note. Now, the title of Dollard and Miller's theory is called psychoanalytic learning theory. So mapapansin ninyo may pagkahalo ito ng parang may essence or may elements ng psychodynamic on that particular aspect. So kindly take note of that. Now, moving forward, I wanted you guys to take note of the 4 fundamental concepts of learning according to Dollard and Miller. Now, in line with that, no, first concept is drive or wanting something. No, what drives our behavior? What do we want in that particular aspect? This is taken from Hall's work using deprivation to produce drive in animals. So when we say deprivation, pwedeng food, deprivation for water, and so on and so forth. So drive is a need according to Dollard and Miller. A need or a drive means a strong stimulus which impels actions. No? So kung mapapansin niyo dito pa lang sa first fundamental concept which is about drive, very psychoanalytic na siya, no? May pagka-psychodynamic na siya on that particular aspect. Moving forward, we have 2 types of drive. It can be internal or external. Internal, hunger or even thoughts. And external, talking about inflicting of pain, discomfort in the environment, and more. There are also primary and secondary drives. When we say primary, natural responses to physical need or discomfort, no? When we say primary, dyan papasok yung physiological needs. Pero kapag naman sinabi nating secondary drive, we're talking about learned values for things associated with satisfactions or distress. Most likely wants. Primary are our needs, secondary are our wants. Moving forward, we have different needs developed in different circumstances, which is why culture is important to understand the drives. So dito sa last bullet, let me just stress this one out, no, na at least on this particular aspect, you are already learning and seeing the interaction of behaviorism and also psychodynamic at this part, no. We're talking about how culture, very, very behaviorism on that note, no. We're talking about culture and how it influences our drives and our how we develop these needs. So yun yung interaction ng psychodynamic sa culture o sa behaviorism aspect. No? Kaya nga tinawag siyang psychoanalytic learning theory for Dollard and Miller. The second drive is what we call cue. No? When we say cue, it is noticing something. For everyone's information, when we talk about cues, cues are discriminative stimuli noticed at the time of the behavior. Very much similar with the drive. It can be external, such as sights and smells, no, or anything that has some or anything that our senses can actually sense out or can actually trigger our senses. And when we say internal, these are our thoughts, no, thought processes, ideas, and more. Determine when and where a person will respond and which response he will make. No, better connection between the cues and the response is equivalent to better learning. So let me just highlight that particular aspect. No, connection between cue and response is equivalent or leads to better learning. And lastly, it can be entire behavior repertoire that indicate a response is necessary or expected. So yun yung sinasabi natin when we talk about cue, no, or noticing something. Because as we all know, ladies and gentlemen, just to add, no, just an additional information, when we talk about cueing, it is a basic process of sensation and perception. Kaya nga natin sinabi, hindi ba, that there are external and internal cues. External cues, it talks about our sensations, senses. And internal cues, it talks about our thoughts or perception. So please pakitandaan po yun, no? So last bullet, just to add with you guys, sabi nga dito sa last bullet, it can be an entire behavior repertoire, no, that indicate a response if a response is necessary or expected. So again, let me just remind you guys, the meaning of repertoire, it is a range, a list, or inventory. No? So at that particular aspect, when there's already a trigger in our environment or perception, which is something internal, we already try to understand, we already try to process if a particular behavior is indeed still very much needed to be executed as a response to that particular trigger in our environment or intrinsic trigger on that particular note. The third fundamental concept of learning is response or doing something. No? So kung mapapansin niyo ha, yung fundamental concepts natin connected yan sa isa't isa. Drive, cue, and now there's a response. When we say response, response are behaviors. Any behavior subject to change through learning is a response, no? Behavior subject to change through learning. So it can be overt, mga bagay na nakikita, na obserbahan natin. It can be covert, mga bagay na hindi nakikita, such as thinking. We develop a response hierarchy. Ano ba yung response hierarchy na pinag-uusapan natin dito? Punishment of a dominant response will produce alternative responses. Rewards and punishment change response position in the hierarchy, and rewards move responses up the hierarchy, and punishment or extinction moves them lower. So tatandaan po yun ha. Let me just highlight the third bullet. Napaka-importante ng third bullet. Rewards move responses up the hierarchy. Punishment and extinction moves them lower. So that's what we're talking about when we are mainly focusing on the response hierarchy. No, so right now, it's not necessarily called response hierarchy. Some of the books or references that you might be looking might be call it or address it as resultant hierarchy. No, so yun yung revised version of that particular aspect already. So ano ba yung example ng response or resultant hierarchy natin? So example, so for example, class, pinagsabihan ka ng nanay mo na dahil gabi na, dahil gabi ka na umuwi. No? Pinagsabihan ka ng nanay mo dahil gabi ka na umuwi. Ano yung response hierarchy? So that's a cue eh. Hindi ba that's a trigger in our environment? Pinagsabihan ka ng nanay mo na gabi ka na umuwi. So in line with that, you can develop or ito yung sinasabi natin from this particular slide, no? That you can necessarily judge or you can necessarily decide whether to provide a behavior repertoire, whether a response still even necessary. And in order for you to do that, you need a particular hierarchy. Hindi ba? So first, sisigaw ka kasi pinagsabihan ka ng nanay mo, no? Sisigaw ka ba? Second, tatahimik ka na lang? Or third, lalambingin mo? In that particular response hierarchy, what do you intend to do as a response or as a result of the trigger na pinagsabihan ka ng nanay mo kasi nga gabi ka na umuwi? No, so there's a response hierarchy on that particular aspect. Hindi ba minsan ganyan din tayo, class? Minsan there's a particular trigger in our environment and we are trying to process what should be our behavior. Ano ba yung dapat ko gawin? Ito ba dapat gagawin ko? For example, nakakita ka ng nagbubugbogan, nag-aaway sa restaurant. What should I do? Ano gagawin ko? Nakita ko sila nag-aaway sa restaurant, nanggugulo na sila. What should I do? Will I intervene? Will I call the manager? Will I call the cops? Or will I just shut my mouth and keep quiet and continue enjoying my food? Ano ang gagawin mo? That's a response hierarchy. Hindi ba? So yun yung sinasabi natin. Yun yung sinasabi kong resultant hierarchy or response hierarchy. Third fundamental concept is actually called reward or getting something. Psychoanalytically, reward is impossible unless there is a drive, and rewards can be innate or learned. So let me highlight this particular bullet. Psychoanalytically, there will be no rewards if there are no drive. Yan ngayon yung sinasabi, ladies and gentlemen, ni Dollard and Miller. Ang sinasabi kasi ni Skinner kanina doon sa pinag-usapan natin, walang drive. I mean, there's drive, yes. I acknowledge that there's drives. I acknowledge that there's a self-awareness. I acknowledge that there's needs. But, however, the tapuat, it doesn't necessarily produce a particular behavior. It doesn't necessarily cause a particular behavior. Yun ang sinasabi ni Skinner. Pero, contradiction to that particular statement of Skinner, sabi ni Dollard and Miller, psychoanalytically, you cannot give a reward. You cannot give a particular reward if there's no drive that actually causes the behavior. Yun ang sinasabi ngayon ni Dollard and Miller. Kaya nga siya psychoanalytic learning theory. There's a combination of psychodynamic and there's a combination of behaviorism. Understood? Nagigets po ba si Dollard and Miller? Yung fundamental thoughts nila? Okay, good. Now, moving forward, we have the learning process. No, learning happens when there's the following. Ano ba yung mga following na yan? No? Learning dilemma. No, it occurs in a situation in which the existing responses are not rewarded. One is motivated, no, to try something different, giving you an opportunity to learn something new. So that's what we call learning dilemma. So please be familiarized yourselves with these ones. Next, extinction occurs when a response is not rewarded. Di ba? Nalaman din natin yan kay Skinner. Spontaneous recovery occurs when an extinguished response recurs. So that's spontaneous recovery, no? Na-extinct na yung behavior pero nag-recur, bumalik yung behavior. So that's a spontaneous recovery. Next, stimulus generalization. Alam nyo na yan. Similar, that is similar with that of Skinner. So di ko na alam, di ko na sabihin yan. Also with discrimination, similar with that of Skinner. Okay? So kindly take note of these particular terminologies. At least kay Dollard and Miller, ang bago lang naman dito is yung learning dilemma and yung spontaneous recovery. Yung dalawang yan yung bago. Because the rest, extinction, generalization, saka discrimination, we learned that already from Skinner. We also have gradients of reward. What do we mean by that? States that the more closely the response is followed by the reward, the more it is strengthened. So in short, at this particular rate, we're talking about the timing. Yung timing ng pagbibigay mo ng reward. Ang sinasabi ni Dollard and Miller, kapag lumabas na yung response, reward agad. Huwag mong patagalin. No? Baka parang ganito lang yan, no? For example, nangako ka that if your child will study hard at kapag lumabas yung result, naging cum laude siya, you will give him iPhone 14 Pro Max 1 terabyte. No? So, true enough, naging cum laude yung anak mo. Pero binigay mo yung reward after 4 months. Eh, don't expect, no? Don't expect. In reality, no? In reality speaking, in practicality speaking, don't expect nga naman na parang mas mare-reinforce yung behavior o yung bata o yung anak mo, no? Kasi binigay mo yung reward niya after 4 months. Lipas na yung celebration, hindi ba, ng pagiging cum laude niya. But if you provided the reward literally right after the result of list of laudes have been published, doon, ladies and gentlemen, expect mo, according to Dollard and Miller, na may strengthen yung behavior. Oh, yes, Miss De Jesus, agad-agad pala. Totoo. No? Parang ganun naman talaga, class, no? 'Di ba? Expect natin na ganun talaga dapat in terms of giving punishment and reinforcement. Next, gradient of punishment states that the more immediately punishment follows misbehavior, the more effective it is in reducing the tendency to misbehave. Hindi ba? Totoo naman. Parang ganito lang yan, no? In the classroom, no? In the classroom. Ito, totoong experience ko to. Ito. I teach nakalagay naman sa credentials ko, hindi ba? I teach in a particular university, no, in Manila. I was walking kasi face to face na, recently lang to nangyari, ngayong November lang din. I was walking, and while walking, alam niyo naman yung mga bata, minsan excited, mga college students, parang ano 'no, wala silang control minsan sa mga lengguwahe nila, mga language or mga words na ginagamit. Knowing na ano gamit suot-suot nila yung uniform nila and so on so forth. So they represent the university when they wear the uniform and the ID. So I was walking, itong may grupong mga bata, nag-uusap sila, siguro asar na asar sila doon sa subject nila. Ano sila, talagang nagmumura sila, ang lulutong ng mura, no? Eh nadinig ko, ang lakas-lakas pa nila magsalita. So immediately, right there and then, I reprimanded them, no? Because of course, as a faculty member, I have the responsibility, no, to also correct misbehaviors of the students. Kahit hindi ko sila directly student, no, I have that responsibility to maintain and uphold the values of the university. No, of course, along with my students. So right there and then, kinausap ko sila. No, I was already about to get their IDs on that particular note, no, kasi ang lutong-lutong talaga ng mura nila, no, ng bad words na sinasabi nila. No, so I talked to them, I gave them warning, no. So just try to think about it. Just try to think about it. If I heard them saying bad words, tapos umalis ako, tapos sabi ko, baka sabihin ko, oh, mamaya ko na nga sila kakausapin, no? And then after my whole class, sabihin natin after 6 hours, binalikan ko sila, do you think it will still affect them as much? No? Baka isipin pa nila, sir, kami ba yon? Kami pa yun, after 6 hours na, bago mo kami kausapin, kami ba yung narinig mo talaga? Baka ganunin pa nila ako. Hindi ba? So in short, the effect of the effect of me reprimanding them, the effect of me talking to them and giving them a warning will not be as effective if I give it after 6 hours when the behavior happened. Understood? Nagigets nyo? That's gradient reward and gradient punishment. Okay? So kindly take note of that. Next, anticipatory responses. Anticipatory responses are responses that precede reward and occur earlier. Anticipation can produce very speedy responses in recurring environments. Example, answering immediately to a professor asking a question produces and precedes a reward. The professor will not get upset. No, so that is an example of anticipatory responses. You already anticipate, no? Ito yung parang basic idea. Ito lang yung dapat yung alalahanin dyan. Are responses that precede reward and occur earlier. Okay, so kindly take note of that. Now, we have learning by limitation. Ano ba yung learning by limitation na to? Lakihan lang natin. Baka di nyo nakikita. All right. So we have learning by limitation, no? Attempts to understand Freud's concept of identification. So there are three processes of imitation. Let me correct myself, imitation. First is same behavior. When two individuals respond to the same situation, example, a mother and a daughter brushes their teeth because it is dirty. Same behavior, process of imitation. Okay? Sir, a second, copying. When one person guides another in developing a behavior. For example, an art teacher assists his students to paint or draw. So there's a guidance, there's an instruction. So same behavior, it is the literal sense of mimicking or literal sense of mirroring, no? Ginagaya ng bata yung nanay niya, no? It's literal mimicking or mirroring. Sa copying, ginagaya ng bata yung nanay, but there's a guidance. There's already an instruction. Okay? So that's the difference. Don't be confused with the terminologies. And next, lastly, match-dependent behavior. When an observer blindly follows a model. No? For example, When in Rome, do as the Romans do. What do we mean by that? Doing everything like the model under wide variety of situations is called generalized imitation. So that is match-dependent behavior. Okay? I hope this is clear with you guys, class, no? With learning by imitation. So there are 3 ways to do it. Same behavior, copying, and match-dependent behavior. Moving forward, we also have the 4 critical training periods of childhood, no? Kung mapapansin ninyo, ito very in line din to kay Freud. In line din to kay Freud, let's start with feeding, the first stage. The first stage is feeding or Freud's oral stage. Lakihan lang natin. Occurs upon birth and satisfies the hunger drive, so is inherently rewarding. O para po sa mga sa mga RPM natin, makinig kayo dito because this is part of developmental psychology. Sa mga RPM natin, part yan ng DevPsych. So please listen. So under Dollard and Miller, we have feeding as the first stage. Occurs upon birth and satisfies the hunger drive, so is inherently rewarding. So mapapansin ninyo sinasatisfy niya yung hunger drive niya, pero there's also a sense of behaviorism. Satisfying the hunger drive is inherently rewarding. That is a primary need, FYI. Next, the responses the infant makes before being fed become strengthened by the reward or food. So for example, umiiyak siya to indicate that the child is already hungry. So that is strengthened or that is reinforced by the food as the reward. Associations with feeding become secondary rewards such as mother smell or touch. A child appropriately responded to love, example is love for parents, self-respect for one's needs, more sociable personality, able to give and take as well. And lastly, a child is left to cry when hungry. So this means loses the response of crying for food, develops character traits of apathy and also anxiety. So kung mapapansin ninyo, this is in line naman with Erik Erikson's trust versus mistrust, particularly with mistrust. No, itong last bullet. In line siya doon sa mistrust ni Freud, ni Erik Erikson. Now, moving forward, we have cleanliness training, or in line with Freud's anal stage, no? Learning to override internal drives to empty his bladder or bowel at will. Too much criticism or too high an expectation leads to, kay Freud, fixation, hindi ba? However, kay Dollard and Miller, these kinds of aspects leads to the child may learn avoidance of the parent to avoid punishment. Okay? And anxiety and guilt if training is not done sensitively. No, pero kay Freud, papasok yan sa anal retention, saka sa anal aggression, hindi ba? So moving forward, we have early sex training or Freud's phallic stage. No? So this is the third stage. Very much similar. Inline kasi ito talaga kay Freud eh. Phallic stage naman to ni Freud sa third stage. Oedipal conflict rather, wherein the gender role behavior and moral behavior are actually being considered or taken into account. Too much control or criticism leads to fears of authority figures and inhibitions. And according to Dollard and Miller, a relaxed attitude around children's explorations of their bodies is actually favored as much as possible in this particular aspect. Lastly, this is the last bullet or last stage rather of Dollard and Miller's periods of childhood. So kindly take note. Anger, anxiety, conflict, no? Ang unique naman dito, class, if I'm not mistaken, this is not related at all to any of Freud's psychosexual stages as compared to the first 3. which mainly represents oral, anal, and also phallic. Itong anger and anxiety conflict, wala siyang direct link, no? Now, moving forward, when we talk about anger, anxiety, conflict, it is a response to the inherent frustration of childhood, such as dependency, limitations physically and mentally, and sibling control or antagonism. Children first act out with regression, which is displayed publicly, no, through anger, no? Or minsan yung mga bata kapag nagtatantrums, that is how they actually express this aggression. When punished, they learn to be anxious about anger. Kaya nga kapag, again be careful with punishment. Kasi yung mga bata, instead of freely expressing themselves, the tendency is for them to suppress these negative emotions kasi nga natatakot sila, they become anxious to be reprimanded. Next, this produces self-control. Now, when you do that, when you reprimand them or when you punish them, this produces self-control around their anger, angry impulses or guilt whenever anger is actually felt. So the tendency is for them to suppress them. The tendency is for them to just actually keep it inside, which at some point in their lives when they grow older may be detrimental, mahirap. No, kasi magiging suppressed drive. Anger can be effectively motivating in the right circumstances, such as assertiveness. Children need to have anger described to them and to learn how to use this powerful emotion responsibly. Kaya nga, as much as possible, again let me emphasize on this particular bullet, no, to use always punishment responsibly, no? Now, we have what we so-called conflict. Ano ba yung conflict na tinatawag natin, no? Conflict related to situational cues, not internal flights between the id and the ego. So, itong not internal flights between the id and the ego, patama to kay Freud. All right? So, this is in contrast with what Freud said, that we experience conflict, ego conflict, if our id and superego are in constant argument with one another and our ego is weak. According to Dollard and Miller, that's not the case. Because we experience conflict due to or related to situational cues. Ano yung situational cues na yun? That is related to the gradient of approach and gradient of avoidance. What are these? Diba? This is different from gradient of reinforcement and gradient of punishment. When we say gradient of approach, it is the tendency to make a response according to distance from the goal or the trigger. For everyone's added information, gradient of approach is defined as the variation in the strength of the drive as a function class of the organism's proximity to its goal. Variation in strength of drive as a function of organism's proximity to its goal. I'll give you an example para mas maintindihan ninyo. A rat's goal, yung daga, no, a rat's goal-directed behavior is increased in intensity as it nears its goal of food. So yung drive niya mas lumalakas hanggang sa lumalapit siya sa goal niya. Ganon. Parang mas na-excite siya. Oh, ito na yung goal ko. Gagalingan ko pa. Parang ganon. Kasi malapit na ako sa finish line Gagalingan ko pa. That is gradient of approach. Gradient of avoidance is the tendency to avoid a feared stimulus is stronger the nearer the subject gets to it. No? So again, for everyone to fully understand it, an additional information, gradient of avoidance is defined as the variation in the strength of the drive as a function of the organism's proximity to an aversive stimulus or feared stimulus. Example, a rat's withdrawal behavior increases in intensity as it nears a feared stimulus such as an electric shock. The avoidant gradient appears steeper than the approach gradient on that particular aspect. So in short, sabi nung daga, under gradient of avoidance, malapit na ako doon sa feared stimulus, sa electric shock, no? Kaya yung withdrawal tendency ko, yung withdrawal drive ko, mas nag-i-increase. Nagigets po ba? Gradient of approach and avoidance? Nagigets? Nagigets yan ha? Siguraduhin niyo po yan, class, please. Okay, because this is important. Now, there are 4 types of conflicts. There are 4 types of conflicts. We have approach conflict. 2 positive goals only represent choosing the one you think offers the most pleasure. So for example, under approach, this is the first type of conflict. Approach is a choice between 2 things that you like. 2 things that you like, no? For example, do you want a pumpkin or an apple pie? Do you want a pumpkin or an apple pie? So assuming that there are no major differences between them, between the 2, you pick whichever is closest or most convenient. Okay? So ganun ang approach. Choosing between 2 things that you like. We have avoidant. 2 goals and are both undesirable. No, so paano to? Parang ganito lang yan, class, no? Do you want to take out the garbage or get yelled at? Ano gusto mo? Ayaw mo ayaw mo magtapon ng basura, ayaw mo ring masigawan. So ano gagawin mo? No? The question is, which 2 jobs or policies or candidates will you choose when you don't want either of the option? Maraming nagsasabi dyan, choose the lesser evil. Parang ganon, hindi ba? Choose the lesser evil. So anong gusto mo doon? No, it's really up to you. So that's avoidant. Yung dalawang option mo, pangit, undesirable. Next, we have approach avoidant. The same goal produces feelings of approach and avoidant. No? So for example, let's say put our fictional rat at one end of a straight run maze. Isang buong run maze yan. Isang straight lang na run maze. Tapos may nilagay kang daga, no? So, may nilagay kang daga dun sa gitna ng run maze. Straight run maze. Now, at the same time, you put both food and electric shock at the other end. You put both food and shock at the other end. So, anong mangyayari sa daga? No? Now, you'll see the approach and avoidant gradients at work. The rat starts to run towards the food, which represents the approach. But the closer it gets, the slower it goes. Kasi nakikita niya yung electric shock. That represents avoidance. Nagigets nyo? Parang ganito lang yan. No? Parang ganito lang yan. Sa mga masteral students natin, parang ganito lang yan. Tapos na yung coursework ninyo. Thesis, assumingly, magkasabay si thesis sa kasi graduation. Thesis defense and graduation. So, habang malayo pa kayo, nung nagsisimula pa lang kayo magmasteral, gustong-gusto nyo, no? Talagang active na active kayo. You want to finish everything ng mabilisan, no? So, you want to finish everything that's approach because you want to graduate. But the moment you are already near your graduation, papalapit ka na sa finish line, nakikita mo thesis defense, nakikita mo yung mga panel mo, nakikita mo yung mga red marks ng thesis advisor mo sa thesis mo. Sabi mo, parang ayaw mo na graduate, no? Kasi nga, ang dami-daming tension. Tama. The closer the thesis, tension increases. Tama, Ms. De Jesus. So that is approach avoidant. Understood? Approach avoidant, understood? Okay, next. Double approach avoidance. What is double approach avoidance? The 4th type of conflict is where you can really drive yourself nuts according to the description. Talagang dito mababaliw ka na, non-clinically of course. Non-clinically speaking. Pero nakakabaliw daw talaga yung double approach avoidance. In a straight run maze, no? In a straight run maze, same example, we put the rat in the middle, literally in the middle. No? Kasi 'di ba sa approach avoidant conflict, yung daga nilagay mo sa isang dulo. Nasa kabilang dulo siya ng straight run maze, Tapos yung positive and negative goal nasa kabilang dulo. That is approach avoidance. Pero sa double approach avoidance, nasa gitna yung daga. All right? It's in the middle. At each end, there is both food and shock. At each end, there's both food and shock. What would you do if you were the rat? No, the rat runs towards one end, but slows down when the avoidant gradient gets too high. And then after nun, it then turns around and runs towards the other end because the approach gradient is stronger. However, kapag papalapit na siya sa kabilang dulo ulit, magi-slow down siya kasi nag-i-increase naman yung avoidant gradient. So, pabalik-balik siya. Hindi niya ngayon alam kung saan siya pupunta. That is double approach avoidance. All right? Understood? Parang board exam lang yan. No? Parang board exam lang yan. Ngayon, no, some of you guys might be experiencing approach avoidant conflict right now because the board exam will still be held sometime in June 2023 if I'm not mistaken. So malayo pa kayo, no? Kaya yung iba sa inyo gusto pang okay pa, chill pa mag-aral, no? Chill pa. But when you are already weeks before the board exam, you might experience double approach avoidance already. Ayaw mo nang mag-board exam kasi feeling mo hindi ka ready. So sabihin mo, pero kapag nag-back out ka naman, kapag naman hindi mo tinake yung board exam, ano na parang hindi ka naman magiging RPsy or RPM. So anong gagawin mo? Parang ganon, no? You are literally going nuts because you no longer know where to go, no? So para siyang ganon, class. I hope that is a viable example for you guys. Longer time of agony but longer time of preparation. Yeah, tama, totoo 'yon, no? Ang mas agonizing pa yan is waiting for the results. Believe me, waiting for the results. That's the torture part. All right, so let's proceed. Reducing a conflict. How do we reduce a conflict? No, how do we reduce a conflict according to Dollard and Miller? No, by keeping a certain distance from the situation that produces anxiety. In short, layuan mo ang trigger mo. The person can continue past the avoidant gradient to continue pursuing the goal. Can occur through therapy or by using tranquilizing drugs sa mga hayop, tranquilizing drugs sa mga animals, even alcohol, no? May mga ganyan tao, that's their defense mechanism eh. They use alcohol, they use drugs para makalimutan yung problema. Tranquilizers, especially alcohol, can disengage inhibitions, however, which put people at risk sometimes, which is true. No, I guess these are already self-explanatory. We have what we so-called frustration aggression hypothesis. So what is this? Describe aggression as the result of frustration, no? When obstacles interfere with drive reduction. Aggression is defined as behavior intent to harm another. So you are already externalizing. You are already directing your aggression or your anger towards other people. Aggression is more likely when the drive is strong, the interference is more complete, and the frustration is actually repeated and repeated. Mas nagiging aggressive yung tao. We also have modifications to the frustration aggression hypothesis. So what are these? So lakihan lang natin ito ng konti. We have the learning responses to frustration. The various responses to frustration and aggression is only one. I wanted you guys to take note of that. According to Dollard and Miller, we also have a modification called displaced aggression. No, aggression is displaced to another target, specifically or especially if the target of frustration is too threatening to confront, but doesn't really reduce the aggressive behavior. So this is very much similar with displacement of Freud's defense mechanism. Displacement ito, ayan. When you are displacing your negative emotions to a less threatening person or object. Next, hostile aggression or the goal of injuring other. And instrumental aggression is in service of the goal. So itong instrumental aggression, ano yung gagawin mo to produce the hostile aggression? That's what we mean by that. Okay? Aggressive cues trigger aggressive behavior, such as explosion of violent media games when the perpetrators suffer to consequences. These are the triggers of aggressive behavior. Those are your cues. Okay? Lastly, role of emotion. No? When we say role of emotion, aggression is often a response to negative emotion, no? Such as embarrassment, fears, disappointment, depression, and physical pain. No? May pagka-CBT na nga eh, kumpara, no? Except tanggalin nyo lang yung cognitive part. May pagka-CBT siya. No, because why? Why did I say na may pagka-CBT? If we are to remove the thought part or the thinking part, there's a cue that produces an emotion that produces a behavior. That's what I mean when I said na may pagka-CBT, tanggalin lang yung thinking part. So that is role of emotion. Now, we also have individual differences in aggressive responses. So what are these? Ego development failure, meaning to say it leads to aggression, gets out of control. No? When the ego development is a failure. Parang kay Freud din yan, hindi ba? We use defense mechanism to protect ourselves when ego is weak. Okay, next. Problems with early attachment, lack of development of empathy. No, so it leads to that. Moreover, in childhood, physical abuse leads to desensitizes some children to the effects of pain in themselves and also other people. So nagkakaroon ng absurdity on that particular aspect when children are actually abused at a very young age. Next, challenging people with fragile self-esteem. How do we do this? Or rather, it is equivalent to violent in response to threats to the ego. No, when a person's self-esteem is fragile, most likely when you challenge these people, you expect violent responses. Parang ganito lang yan, no? With fragile self-esteem, when a person with fragile self-esteem, when there's a threat to his masculinity, he produces violence against female partners or homosexuals. So parang ganito lang yan, no? Particularly talking to people or men with fragile self-esteem. Okay. Next, we have neurosis under Dollard and Miller. No, so neurosis are due to maladaptive learning. So FYI due to maladaptive learning. So what are these? Dollard and Miller called neurosis the stupidity misery syndrome. Ayusin ko lang to class, just a moment. Oh, what happened? Capitalize each word. Okay. All right. So neurosis is called stupidity misery syndrome. Bakit? That's the question. Why is it called that particular aspect? Because I wanted you guys to take note that when we are neurotic or when a person is neurotic, we are experiencing a strong, unconscious, unlabeled emotional conflict. No, yun daw yung nangyayari. The result of our experiences is that we can't discriminate effectively and make bad decisions. No, we can't discriminate. We can't, with a T, we can't discriminate effectively, and as a result, we make bad decisions. Kaya nga siya stupidity misery syndrome. Stupid ka, no? Sorry sa terminology, but that's the term used by Dollard and Miller. The person is a stupid person, meaning to say, unconscious yung tao, unable to actually determine what his emotions are or whatsoever, no, what cannot even determine or cannot even put a label on these particular emotions. In short, are ignorant, no? Kaya nga stupid, kaya nga sinabing stupid. Ignorant, and as a result produces bad decisions which results to misery. Kaya siya tinawag na stupidity misery syndrome. Okay? So kindly take note of that. Now, in line with that particular aspect, No, in line with that particular aspect, when we are unaware of our conflict, meaning to say, when we are stupid, we are unaware of our conflict, we are stupid, we make bad decisions that makes us miserable. Yan yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. Our misery as a result, our misery is a result of not labeling our conflicts. Kaya nga 'di ba sa psychotherapy, sa mga RPsy natin dito, you have a psychotherapy course for your board exam. Kaya nga 'di ba sa psychotherapy, when you do CBT or when you do other forms of therapy, napaka-important, yes, Miss De Jesus, napaka-important na i-label mo what are the emotions that you are feeling. Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? By labeling and by properly identifying your emotions, you will be able to know how to properly handle it as well. Kaya napaka-importante ng label. Hindi lang sa relationship important ang label, sa emotions din natin or sa conflicts din natin. Okay? Next. By doing so, the solution is to discover the proper label. As what's stated by Ms. De Jesus, napaka-importante ng label. So, the solution is to properly label it, no? For example, like a fairy tale of Rumpelstiltskin. You know who Rumpelstiltskin is? No? The one who put the curse on the family which could not be lifted if they guessed his name. Alam niyo ba yon, yung fairy tale na yon, yung story ni Rumpelstiltskin? May nilagay siyang curse sa pamilya, no? Tapos para ma-lift yung curse, kailangan masabi o kailangan mahulaan ng pamilya yung pangalan niya, which is Rumpelstiltskin. So if you doesn't know the fairy tale, that's the story, no? Now, kasi manloloko si Rumpelstiltskin eh. Niloko niya yung family, no? So para mawala yung curse, kailangan mahulaan yung pangalan niya. So in short, in line with that particular story, we have to guess what we are feeling and label it according to Dollard and Miller. Once labeled, the curse is broken. If we are to apply it in therapy, we are no longer stupid. If we labeled our emotions, if we labeled our conflict, the curse is broken, we are no longer stupid. The stupidity is broken, no? And won't make ourselves miserable as a result. So yun yung tinatawag nating stupidity misery syndrome ni Dollard and Miller. Nauhaw ako doon. Saglit lang po. Understood yung stupidity misery syndrome? Okay, good. Next. Aware na kayo dyan, ha? Ayan o, Seligman calls this helplessness. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, class. Paulit-ulit ako dito eh. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo na yung mga theories na yan, same lang naman sila ng sinasabi. Same lang sila ng sinasabi, iba-iba lang sila ng terminology. Kaya nga po sa advanced TOP sa advanced TOP, pati sa DevPsych, no, pati sa DevPsych, ganun din naman yung developmental stages eh. Same lang naman yung sinasabi, iba-iba lang ng terminology. Hindi ba? Kay Dollard and Miller, di ba meron siyang developmental stages na parang hinango lang niya doon sa psychosexual stages ni Freud? Same lang naman, pero different terminologies, different names. So I want you guys to be familiarized on those particular aspects kasi dyan kayo minsan maguguluhan. Alright? So pagdating sa board exam, so kindly take note of that. Oh, let's proceed. Health, no? According to Dollard Miller, language. Let's talk about that. No? Provides discriminative cues for learning how to deal with the situation. No? Self-control, saglit lang po. Self-control often comes in a form of self-talk. No? And unlabeled emotional experiences go underground into the unconscious. So may mga tao na gano'n, no, na yung self-talk, whenever they talk to themselves, whenever they try to analyze their own emotions, they do self-talk. That's a way to actually identify your emotions and to put a label on it. Language enables faster learning. Children develop insight into their own motivations and outcomes of their own behavior. Kaya may mga tao, 'di ba, they get insight may mga tao, class, that when they rationalize, yung alam nyo, yung tumatahimik lang sila and they just try to think and think and think. No, but that's not the case, class, no? The tendency, when you do that, you tend to become overwhelmed and you tend to overdwell on your thoughts. So you tend to drown. Kaya may mga tao na nagkakaroon ng insomnia sa gabi kasi isip ng isip, no? Yung rationalization nila kakaisip, it evolves into overthinking, no? Into paranoia. However, that's why according to Dollard and Miller, use language, verbal language. You're right, no? May mga tao na nagda-diary kaya nga mas nako-compose nila yung sarili nila. May mga tao na I have clients, they record themselves. Kapag wala silang kausap, they record themselves, no? Kasi kapag pinapakinggan nila yung boses nila, kapag pinapakinggan nila yung verbalization ng thoughts nila, mas na formulate nila at mas na-organize nila yung thoughts nila. No, so I have those kinds of clients, no? So that's the power of language according to Dollard and Miller. No, also facilitates generalization of learning from one situation to the next and enables problem solving skills using reasoning and also planning. And lastly, how about suppression? Suppression, according to Dollard and Miller, is a willful control of thinking, putting thoughts out of consciousness. This is a willful, ha? When you suppress, you are conscious. When you repress, you are unconscious. Kaya nga 'di ba yung repression, it is a defense mechanism by Freud, and all defense mechanisms according to Freud are done unconsciously. Kaya when you repress, that is unconscious. When you suppress, that is a conscious act. Aware ka na ayaw mong matandaan lahat ng negative memories. You suppress, okay? Research shows that suppression is counterproductive as a thought or feeling will interrupt later more powerfully. So the effect is very much similar with repression. You try to put away all these negative thoughts and emotions out of your consciousness to protect yourself at the moment, but it is counterproductive, similar with repression. It is a double-edged sword because later on it will hunt you down in a different form. Allowing suppressed thoughts to be expressed prevents the rebound effect. Kaya nga 'di ba sinasabi, iiyak mo lang, i-express mo lang. Okay lang 'yan, no? When we do counseling, when your client cries in front of you, ako as a counselor, as a therapist, I do not stop my client. I just offer tissue, no? Because we do not want our clients to suppress or repress their emotions because it will be counterproductive later on. Next, even suppression or happy expression puts greater strain on the sympathetic nervous system biologically. Not only does it impair the immune system, it also impairs thoughts and also memories. And lastly, expressing emotions through writing. Language pa rin, no? Through writing has positive health benefits, enhancing the immune system. No, kaya nga if you are a therapist, no, if you are soon to become a therapist, writing, allowing your clients or suggesting journals, that will be helpful for them as well. No, if they cannot properly verbalize orally yung mga sinasabi nila o yung mga nararamdaman nila, writing, no, is also a good way to express their emotions. Is everything clear with Dollard and Miller? No, I hope that is clear, no? Mas klaro yung discussion. Now, let's have at anong oras na ba? 10:16. Let me check, class. Bandura, Rotter, Michelle, and Kelly. Sige, saglit na lang naman yung mga yan, no? I hope. So, on that particular note, class, let's have a 15-minute break, no? Before we proceed with Bandura. Ilock na lang natin. It's already 10:16 on my watch. Ilock na lang natin ng 10:15. So, I'll see you guys at 10:30. Just a moment. All right. So let's already proceed class with our discussion, no? And right now, we are already in Albert Bandura. Si Bandura, isa na yan sa mga pinakakilala din when it comes to behaviorism. As you all know, we have the social cognitive theory, no? On that particular note, let us have an overview of what Bandura's theory is all about, no? On what social cognitive theory is all about. So for everyone's information, lakihan lang din natin. All right, agentic perspective. So that's one of the main ideas of Albert Bandura, agentic perspective, meaning that humans have some limited ability to control their lives. So what is the basic aspect of agentic perspective? No, there are 5. Recognizes that chance encounters and fortuitous events often shapes our behavior. So focus on these chance encounters, focus on that. Places more emphasis on observational learning. Hindi ba isa din kilala si Albert Bandura sa observational learning theory. Stresses the importance of cognitive factors in learning. So at least on this particular aspect, you are very much aware na nagiging hybrid na talaga yung mga sumunod na theories. Kasi during Skinner's time, sina Ivan Pavlov, sina Watson, napaka-strict niyan sa pagiging behaviorism. Sila kasi yung mga grandfathers of behaviorist theory, no? Kaya talagang pure breed sila, kumbaga purebred rather. However, as we proceed, hindi ba we talked about Dollard and Miller, now we're talking about Bandura. Makikita natin that they are now branching out, not specifically only on behaviorism, but that of Dollard and Miller, di ba psychoanalytic sila, may halo ng psychodynamic. Ngayon naman si Bandura may halo ng cognitivism. No, so kindly take note of that. So they are already half-breed or half-bred behaviorist theorists. Moving forward, suggests that human activity is a function of the behavior and person variables as well as environment. So these are the factors that influences one's behavior according to him, and believes that reinforcement is mediated by cognition. So again talagang dito pa lang sa overview nakikita nyo na that Albert Bandura is a combination of behaviorism and cognitivism. No, so kindly take note of that. As for the human agency, according to Bandura, it is the essence of humanness, the ability to organize, regulate, and enact behaviors, behaviors that believe to produce desirable consequences. So what are these? First, intentionality, a proactive commitment to actions that may bring about desired outcomes. That's intentionality. Forethought, the ability to set goals. No? So these are factual non-negotiables. Kailangan nyo lang talaga silang basahin, get yourself familiarized or if possible, memorize them. Self-reactiveness allows monitoring our progress towards fulfilling our choices and goals. So that's reactiveness. And self-reflectiveness allows people to think about and evaluate their motives, values, and life goals. So the clue word for self-reflectiveness is evaluate. Think about and evaluate. Now, we have what is so-called reciprocal determinism under Bandura, a model which holds that human functioning is molded. Nilalakihan ko lang guys, sorry for this, para lang din klaro sa iba. A model which holds the human functioning is molded by the reciprocal interaction. We have behavior, person variables, and also environmental events. So these are your triarchic reciprocal causation. Lahat itong tatlo daw ito, class, no, itong tatlong ito, it affects and molds human behavior. Tatandaan niyo po yan, okay? Now, in line with reciprocal determinism, we have what we so-called chance encounters and fortuitous events. Babalikan ko lang yung first slide natin. We're talking about this one, chance encounters and fortuitous events that actually shapes one of the factors that shapes our behavior. No, so doon to hinango dito sa overview na yan. So in line with that, let's further expound reciprocal determinism in line with chance encounters and fortuitous events. In line with this, people have their life path altered by unexpected events. What are these events? Let's say, for example, class, if we are to apply it in the current state of our being right now, when we say fortuitous or chance encounters, what can we provide as an example in what is currently happening right now in our world? Sige nga. Naranasan natin to for the past 2 to 3 years ngayon. COVID-19. Can we consider that as a chance encounter and fortuitous event that permanently and perhaps molded our behavior as human beings? Yes or no? Class, come on. Hindi ba? Yes. Hindi naman natin ine-expect yung COVID-19. But it is an event, a chance encounter that basically altered our behavior as human beings. No? Now, in line with that, when we say chance encounters, these are unintended meeting of persons unfamiliar to each other. Fortuitous events, an environmental experience that is unintended or unexpected. So COVID-19, is that a chance encounter or a fortuitous event? Is that a chance encounter or fortuitous? Correct. It is an event, no, not necessarily an individual. So it is an FE or fortuitous event. Now, both enter the reciprocal determinism paradigm as the environment point, no? At the environment point. So itong chance encounter sa fortuitous event, dito siya papasok sa environment. If you can see my cursor, dito siya papasok sa environment. So kindly take note of that. They influence behavior as much as planned events, no? Planned events such as marital partners and occupation. So equally, these chance encounters, yung mga bagay na hindi naman natin plinano, they also shape our behaviors. Now, in line with that, we have what we so-called self-esteem. No, the self-esteem is a set of cognitive structure. Saan papasok ang cognitive structure, class? Doon sa triad natin. Sinabi na yan kanina, if you are listening or if you are properly reading my notes, saan siya papasok? Behavior, personal characteristics, or environment? Saan papasok yan sa triarchic reciprocal procession? So this is just a review, ha? Okay, correct. No, papasok siya sa personal characteristics. Very good. Now, in line with that, no, self-esteem gives some degree of consistency to people's behavior. So dito papasok at some point yung genetic aspect, no, kahit papaano. So under self-esteem, there are 3: human agency, self-regulation, and self-evaluation. No? So in line with these particular aspects, under human agency, we have self-efficacy, proxy agency, and collective efficacy. So let's try to identify. No? In line with self-efficacy, ladies and gentlemen, again, balikan natin to. Self-efficacy is the first degree of human agency. Okay? So in line with self-efficacy, it is the foundation of human agency. Foundation, all right? It is the people's beliefs that they can or cannot exercise those behaviors necessary to bring about a desired consequence. Strongest predictor of people's behavior. If you have high self-efficacy, they believe or you believe that you can do something that has potential to change things. It is not an expectation of outcomes, ability to do things, or doing things without anxiety. But rather, its level varies from situation to situation depending on competencies required. Now, in layman's term, para mas madali nating maintindihan because this definition is highly technical. In layman's term, when we say self-efficacy, ito yung tiwala mo sa sarili mo. Tiwala mo sa sarili mong kakayahan, sa sarili mong abilidad, sa sarili mong skills. No, kaya nga nakalagay dito, if you have high self-efficacy, ito yung tiwala mo sa sarili mong kakayahan o yung potentiality mo that can change or alter things. That is self-efficacy, FYI. Now, in line with self-efficacy, lalakihan ko lang ito. In line with self-efficacy, there are 4 sources. so that we can increase the level of self-efficacy. First is mastery experience, no? What do we mean by that? Past performance, successful performances, individual achievements. Failure decreases if person gave his or her best. So mastery experiences. So dyan papasok yung practice, practicing your craft, honing your abilities, and so on and so forth. Moving forward, we have social modeling, no? What do we mean by social modeling? Vicarious experience or observing of someone or of equal ability succeed or fail at a particular task. So it is literally observing an individual, no? Kaya nga sinabi dyan, vicarious experience. So when we say vicarious experience, you are learning from other people's experiences by looking. It can be by directly observing, by listening, by just hearing a particular story, no? Pwede yung ganon. Later we will be dealing with observational learning theory. Okay, so kindly take note of that. Later on, moving forward, we have social persuasion, no? Listening to a trusted person's encouraging words, no? Power of persuasion depends on the status of authority of persuasion or to be persuaded. So kapag naaaya ka, na-encourage ka dahil sa mga magaganda at mabubulaklak na sinasabi ng colleague mo, that is social persuasion, no? Next is physical and emotional states. Anxiety or fear usually lowers self-efficacy. So if you are low in terms of these particular aspects, your self-efficacy usually is heightened. No, so they share in a way negative correlation with one another. No. The next aspect of human agency is proxy agency. So what is this? One of the three modes of human agency. It involves indirect control over those social conditions that affect the everyday living. No, not everything can be learned or accomplished by one person. No, example, hiring people to do something for you. Yun yung sinasabi nating proxy agency. Proxy from the title itself, no? Meaning to say, kapag di ba sinabi nating proxy, kapag a-attend ka ng event, hindi mo kayang pumunta doon, you get a proxy to attend on your behalf. So that is proxy agency. You get something to do something on you get someone to do something on your behalf. Proxy, no? Successful living in the 21st century requires people to seek proxies to supply their food, deliver information, provide transportation, etc. Parang ganito lang yan. If you buy something from Shopee or Lazada, that particular company hires a proxy to deliver your parcel on their behalf. Hindi ba? Like they hire JNT, they hire LBC, or whatsoever. In other forms, yung iba sa inyo, let's say for example, may kasambahan, may yaya sa mga anak ninyo, hindi ba? Because you yourselves as parents, you are so busy, no? You are so busy to work, no? With your work, you are you are dwelling with your work already. Your hands are already full, so you hire someone to look after your children. So that is proxy agency. Di ba? Without the use of proxies, modern people would be forced to spend most of their time securing the necessities for survival. Parang ganun lang yon, no? Yes, pasabay nung mga lockdowns. Yes, that is proxy agency. Good. And lastly, we have collective efficacy, no, as one of the three elements of human agency. Collective efficacy is a level of confidence that people have that their combined efforts will produce social change. Combined efforts, ha, yun yung clue word dito. Combined efforts will produce social change. For example, at least 4 factors can lower collective efficacy. First, events in other parts of the world can leave people with a sense of helplessness. So a sense of helplessness lowers collective efficacy. Second, complex technology can decrease people's perception of control over their environment. Third, entrenched bureaucracies discourage people from attempting to bring about social change. And fourth, the size and scope of worldwide problems contribute to people's sense of powerlessness. So all of these particular aspects contributes to lowering collective efficacy. And the opposite of these particular factors increases collective efficacy. Now, let's proceed with self-regulation. Para sa mga hindi nakakatanda, tapos na tayo sa human agency. Now, we are talking about the self-regulation aspect of self-esteem. Okay? So let's talk about self-regulation. By using reflective thoughts, humans can manipulate their environments. Lakihan ko lang to, sorry. Okay. By using reflective thought, humans can manipulate their environments and produce consequences of their actions, giving them some ability to regulate their own behavior. Okay, so Bandura believes that behavior stems from a reciprocal influence of external and internal factors. So what are these? No, when we say two external factors contribute to self-regulation, we're talking about standards of evaluation from parents and teachers. So evaluation that we are getting from other people. Kaya nga siya tinawag na external factor. And external reinforcement, such as it can be primary or secondary needs, such as incentives, money, food, or whatsoever. No? Three internal factors contribute to self-regulation. No? So we have self-observation, no? When you monitor your own performance, your own development. Second, judgmental process, a personal standard towards self, standard of reference coming from other people. Kaya nga siya reference, you have reference externally. Overall value of the activity and performance attributed to one's efforts. And the last internal factor is self-reaction that can be positive or negative depending on personal standards, which is either self-reinforcement of self-punishment. So again, just a review under your self-regulation, it is affected by two external factors, standards of evaluation and external reinforcement, and it is affected by three internal factors, self-observation, judgmental process, and self-reactions. Okay? These are non-negotiable, factual aspects. So read them, get yourself familiarized with them, and memorize them. Next, we have self-regulation through moral agency. What are these, or what is this? No? In line with these particular aspects, I wanted you guys to take note that internalized self-sanctions prevent people from violating their own moral standards, either through self-activation or disengagement of internal control. So there are two ways to do this. No, yung sinabi ko nga through selective activation, which is refers to the notion that self-regulatory influences are not automatic but operate only if activated, and people have no internal conscience or superego. So just an additional information on this particular aspect, when we say selective activation, it is done when you choose to act on your own moral standards. Kaya nga siya selective activation. You choose to act based on your moral standards. Yung second naman is disengagement of internal control, meaning to say, people are capable of separating themselves from the negative consequences of their behavior by justifying the morality of inhuman, reprehensible conduct. So again, just to add an information, under the disengagement of internal control, dito papasok yung mga tao na kahit na may moral standard can still engage in inhumane acts. may moral standard ka, pero you're still engaging with inhumane acts. Kaya nga nakalagay dito, it means that people are capable of separating themselves from the negative consequences of their behavior kahit they are moral, kahit they are doing self-regulation through moral agency. Okay? So kindly take note of that, huh? Now, in line with these particular aspects, we have the mechanisms of disengagement and selective activation. First, we have redefining behavior. No, we do this by justifying otherwise reprehensible actions by collectively restructuring them. Kaya nga siya redefining eh. How do we restructure it? By moral justification, that's one of them. Justifying otherwise culpable behavior on moral grounds. For example, the Christian Crusade. Another one, palliative comparisons. What is this palliative comparison? Before I proceed with palliative comparison, let me just add something on the moral justification. An example of that kasi is the Christian Crusade. Have you heard, do you know the story of the Holocaust, class? Alam ni Miss De Jesus. How about the others? The story of the Holocaust. Alam nyo, hindi ba? Because class, hindi ba, in the Holocaust, in Hebrew, it's called Shoah or catastrophe, meaning in English. In Yiddish and in Hebrew, Hebrew Hurban, it's called destruction. It is a systematic state-sponsored killing of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children, and million others by the Nazi Germany and its collaborators during the World War II. So later on, I will try to expound on that particular aspect, especially when I talk about euphemistic labels. Change the moral tone of terms of their behavior, or Nazis' purification of Europe. Yun yung term nila eh. That is euphemistic label. Change of moral tone or terms of their behavior. From the Nazi Germany's point of view, it's purification of Europe. But in Hebrew's point of view, it is a catastrophe. It is a destruction because Nazi Germany are killing 6 million Jewish men, women, and children. So nagigets nyo? Dahil nga binago lang naman yung terminology, naging maganda yung dating. Naging acceptable yung dating because for them, it's purification. So that is euphemistic labels. All right. Now, another one is palliative comparison, making advantageous comparisons between their behavior and that even more reprehensible behavior of others. So these are the 3 ways on how we redefine our behavior. Okay. Next is disregard or distort consequences. What is this or what are these? We disregard or distort the consequences of our actions through minimization or minimizing, such as, okay lang yan, di naman siya nasaktan. Okay lang na binatukan siya, di naman masakit. Parang ganon. That's minimization. Disregard or ignore. This should be or, okay? Disregard or ignore, let's say for example, when bad behavior wasn't witnessed. So you simply disregard it. And lastly, distort or misconstrue, spanking as a sign of love. It's a distorted way of showing love. You're hurting people as a sign of love. So parang ganun siya. So I wanted you guys to take notes of these mechanisms of disengagement and selective activation. Okay, napaka-importante. We also have the humanize or blaming of victims. What do we mean by this? The humanization or blaming. The humanize so they don't feel guilty. You blame the victim so you don't feel, as the perpetrator, you don't feel guilty. It's like you are gaslighting, hindi ba? Manipulation, a form of manipulation. Attributing the blame to the victims as if they asked for it. Hindi ba? Which is commonly nakikita natin to doon sa mga rape victims, hindi ba minsan? When the rape victims speak up, no, or stand on her or his grounds, sometimes sasabihin pa ng perpetrator, inakit mo ko, you ask for it. Pero ngayon, why are you blaming me when in fact you are the one who seduced me? So that is the humanization or blaming of the victims. Okay? Next, displacing or diffusing responsibility. Displacing responsibility on an outside source, just carrying out orders, no? Or diffusing of responsibility, spreading responsibility as if no one is responsible. So these are ways, these are ways of mechanisms and selective activation. Before I proceed, questions? Or everything is clear? Claro, good. Now we have learning, no? People learn through observing others and by attending to the consequences of their own actions. Although Bandura believes that reinforcement aids learning, he contends that people can learn in the absence of reinforcement and even on a response. He calls it observational learning or modeling theory and enactive learning. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng mga yan, no? So in line with observational learning theory, it is more efficient than learning through direct experience. More efficient daw according to Bandura. Because when you have a direct experience, you can be punished or you can be reinforced or rewarded. But according to Bandura, there's no need for that. No, we can learn even without punishment and reward. No, kaya nga meron tayong observational learning. Sabi niya, it is the heart of observational learning. The heart of observational learning is modeling. Now, what is modeling? Modeling more than simple imitation because it involves adding and subtracting from observed behavior. So ito yung sinasabi natin kanina, if social learning and observational learning is similar, no? Because when we talk about observational learning, it has the idea of modeling. No, and on that particular aspect, it is more in-depth. No, because it involves adding and subtracting from observed behavior. Now, in line with that, at least 3 principles influence modeling. First, people are most likely to model high-status people. High-status people like, sino ba? Heart Evangelista, sino pa ba? Small Laude, di ba? We find them as high-status individuals in the field of fashion, in the field of influencing, no? So, people who are also fond of fashion tends to copy them, tends to imitate and model them. Hindi ba? Sa field natin, no, sino ba yung mga psychologists, prominent psychologists in our field na ina-idolize ninyo at minomodel ninyo? So yun, kapag meron kayong ganung tao in your mind, you model that. That is part of modeling, no? You model people who are high status individuals. Next, people who lack skill, power, or status are most likely to model. People model high status individuals because yung mga taong nagmo-model, they lack skills, powers, and status. No? People with high status, people who are considered as high status, no longer model the people of the same level. Same level lang kayo, but yung imo-model yung isa't isa, hindi ba? So low status individuals model high status individuals. So that's the rule. Next, people tend to model behavior that they see as being rewarding to the model. No? So kindly take note of that as well. So in observational learning, there are 4 processes. The first is attention, noticing what a model does. So you observe, the model, high status individual caught your attention. So you observe. No, you observe. Representation, symbolically representing retained in memory or imagery, such as verbal coding. No, we use this through verbal coding, such as used to rehearse behaviors symbolically. So that is representation. The clue word is symbolic, symbolically. No. Third step is behavior production, producing the behavior that one observes. You already try to produce it yourself. And the fourth is motivation. The observer must be motivated to perform the observed behavior and tells whether the person will indeed do it or not do it at all. So these are the four processes of observational learning theory. ARBM, ARBM, attention, representation, behavior production, and motivation. Okay? So that's the four processes. In line with that, di ba meron tayong observational learning? Meron din tayong enactive learning according to Albert Bandura. What is this? Enactive learning, all behavior is followed by some consequence. Whether that consequence reinforces behavior depends on the person's evaluation of the situation. So the consequences have three functions: inform people of the effects of the situation or action rather, motivate anticipation, and reinforce behavior. So tingnan nyo to ha. Sorry. Iba na pala yon. In enactive learning class, it's still part of observational learning. Pero dito kasi nagkakaroon na tayo ng feedback. So for example, na-observe natin yung isang behavior. For example, nakita natin yung isang bata, may inobserve siyang nakakatanda. Yung nakakatanda, nakita niyang bata, nagmano. Nagmano yung 28-year-old adult sa 50-year-old adult individual. After magmano nung 28-year-old individual, binigyan siya ng pera na 500 pesos, no? So, through the enactive learning, through the feedbacking process, nakita niya yung consequences ng pagmamano. Nakita niya that it is rewarding kasi binibigyan ng pera yung 28-year-old guy. No? And as a result, mas mamomotivate siya to actually do the behavior kasi nakita niya it's rewarding. Yung pagmamano is rewarding. I will be rewarded with money if I bless. Another one. May bata, nakita niya yung isang lalaki, sinigawan niya yung nakakatanda. After shouting on the other person slapped the face of the man. So, ang nangyari, nakita niya umiiyak-iyak ngayon yung lalaki. So, the shouting behavior was observed by the kid, and as a result, the person was slapped by the face. The person experienced pain because he or she is crying. So ngayon, na-internalize ng bata na, shouting is something negative, a behavior that produces negative consequence, and I will not do that. So that is enactive learning. There's already the consequence involved in the modeled action being observed. Klaro? Klaro po ba? I hope that's clear, ha? So let's proceed. We have dysfunctional behavior according to Bandura. It is learned through the mutual interaction of the person, including cognitive and neurophysiological processes, the environment, and the behavioral factors. So in short, yung tatlo, yung triad natin, no? Includes depression, phobias, and aggressive behavior as part of the dysfunctional behavior according to Bandura. Depression, people who develop depressive reactions often does the following. Lakihan lang natin. Underestimate their successes and overestimate their failures. People who are depressed set personal standards that are too high, and they treat themselves badly for their faults. All right. When it comes to phobias, let's just enlarge this. When it comes to phobias, these are the characteristics learned by direct contact, inappropriate generalization, and observational experiences. Once learned, they are maintained by negative reinforcements as the person is reinforced by avoiding fear-producing situations. Lastly, we have aggressive behavior. When carried to extremes, aggressive behaviors can become dysfunctional. In a study of children observing live and filmed models being aggressive, Bandura and his associates found that aggression tends to foster more aggression. Hindi ba parang yung parang yung Bobo doll, no? Alam niyo ba experience ng Bobo doll? Tama ba? Bobo doll ba yun? Yung ano, yung doll na sinusuntok-suntok ng bata tapos yung doll patuloy pa rin tumatayo. No? So that's the Bobo doll experiment. Hindi ba that's an experiment about aggression? No, so kindly take note of that. That when being observed, that when aggression behavior is being observed by other people, they will find, lalong-lalo na yung mga children, they find it natural, and the tendency is for them to copy that kind of behavior. Kaya nga 'di ba kapag may bata sa environment, we are always told na, oh, don't say bad words ha, may bata, maririnig ka niyan, gagayahin ka niyan. So that's a form of aggressive behavior observation as an idea of dysfunctional behavior by Bandura. Now, is Albert Bandura clear before I proceed with Julian Rotter? Claro? All right. Okay, good. Class, I do apologize na papadalas yung break natin, but my throat is acting up already. Can we have at least 10-minute break? All right, thank you. So I'll see you at 11:15, please. Thank you. Class, let's already proceed with our discussion. It's already 11:15. There are three more, we have Rotter all the way to Kelly and Michelle. So let's already proceed, no? When we say Julian Rotter, it is basically called social learning theory. Just a moment. Just a moment, class. I just need to verify something. Okay. Class, so I wanted you guys to take note of this, no? That Julian Rotter's idea is social learning theory, no? Baka kasi maguluhan din kayo when it comes to his similarity with that of Albert Bandura. But just to remind everyone that when we talk about Albert Bandura, the name of his theory is social cognitive theory. So social learning theory is by Julian Rotter. Now, in line with that particular aspect, the basic points is that cognitive factors help shape how people react to environments, and cognition's past histories and expectations of the future are the keys of predicting actually the behavior. So at this particular aspect, framing these particular point of views, still cognitive aspects play a very significant role in the theory of Julian Rotter, kahit na mainly under siya ng behaviorism. An interactionist, according to Rotter, believes that neither the environment itself nor the individual is completely responsible for the behavior. He used formulas to predict both specific and general behavior. So later on, we will try to identify what are these specific and also general behaviors. Rotters have 5 basic assumptions in his theory with social learning theory. The first is to humans interact with their meaningful environments. No, humans' personality is also something that is learned, not necessarily bestowed or given due to heredity and genes. Personality has a basic unity. Motivation is goal-directed, which is can actually be explained by empirical law of effect, which is something that we have discussed also or tackled also earlier. And people are capable of anticipating for events. So kindly take note of those particular aspects. Now, just to add further explanation on these 5 basic assumptions, when we talk about number 1, we are talking about reactions that depends on the meaning or importance of a person that attaches to the environment. Kaya nga siya sinabi na meaningful environment or event, no? In short, environment in general doesn't necessarily mean that it will automatically affect our behavior, but it actually the meaning that we attach to these particular events or behavior that influences our behavior. Next, for the second one, we are mainly talking about the possibility that can be changed, that personality can change or can still be changed at any age. Kaya nga siya learned, hindi ba? For the third basic assumption, personality has a basic unity. It is basically on that particular aspect, we now at some point also acknowledge that it is relatively stable. No, although it is relatively stable, still it can still be changed as time passes by as we proceed to a particular age of our life. Second, like what discussed earlier, empirical law of effect basically talks about that reinforcement in any action, condition, or event which affects individual's movement towards a particular goal. Kaya nga siya sinabi that motivation is goal-directed. No? So kindly take note of those particular additional information. No? Moving forward, we have 4 variables as predicting specific behaviors. What are these? No? BP, kailangan may mga acronym yan, class, because later on it will be I will be presenting with you guys a formula like, no, formula in terms of these particular variables, so that you need to familiarize yourself when it comes to the acronym. So BP stands for behavioral potential. It is the possibility that that a particular response will occur at a given time and place in relation to its likely and reinforcement. It's a function of both expectancy and reinforcement value, and behavior that leads to greater reinforcement has highest potential. And at the same time, behavior that has greatest expectation of reinforcement has highest potential as well. The next is expectancy as the second variable that predicts specific behavior. The confidence that a particular reinforcement will follow a specific behavior is in a specific situation or situations. That is expectancy. You're already expecting, in short. Under this, we have generalized expectancy, meaning to say learn through previous experiences. Generalized, no? Generalized leads to previous experiences. We also have specific expectancy, something that is personal, something that is specific. And total expectancy, meaning to say GE plus specific expectancy. GE plus E, or a combination of that, determines the amount of effort a person will give on that particular situation. The fourth is reinforcement value. So when we say reinforcement value, everyone, it is a person's preference for any particular reinforcement over other reinforcements if all are equally likely to occur. No, so that is reinforcement value in a nutshell. So for Rotter, negative reinforcement is equivalent to anything with a negative value or punishment. Desire not sufficient to predict a particular behavior. So in line with these particular aspects, I wanted you guys to be familiarized or to familiarize yourself rather to what are the things that actually determines RV or reinforcement values. Kindly take note of this. Internal reinforcement. We also have external reinforcement coming from the society or environment. The needs and anticipation for reinforcement. So itong apat na to, it determines the RV. In line with that, I wanted you guys to take note of the reinforcement sequence. No, these are the reinforcement seldom occurs individually and they appears in cluster. Kaya nga siya reinforcement. They appear in cluster, not individually. Or if they appear individually, it is very seldomly occurring. Okay? Kaya siya reinforcement kasi cluster, magkakasama silang nag-occur. Okay? So kindly take note of that. Now, lastly, we have the last variable, which is the psychological situation, or S, which is defined as a complex set of cues acting upon an individual for any specific time period. So these are cues, meaning to say triggers, situations in the environment that triggers the behavior. The part of external and internal world to which a person is responding. To which a person is responding, meaning to say trigger. Yun yung clue word din yung trigger. Behavior is a function of the interaction between of people with their meaningful environment, not synonymous with external stimuli and not limited by time also. So, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo formula. Kaya ako sinasabi sa inyo class na napaka-importante for you guys to actually be aware and familiarize yourself with the acronyms being utilized with the 4 variables that I was talking about. Okay? So, the basic prediction formula, hypothetically, in any specific situation, behavior can be predicted by a basic prediction formula. So the goal is to get the reinforcement. Kindly take note of that. No? Now, tatandaan nyo yung formula na to kasi si Rotter lang naman yung may formula sa TOP. Sa pagkakatanda ko no, if my memory serves me right, si Rotter lang yung may pagka-mathematician sa buong TOP, sa buong Advanced Theories of Personality, siya lang yung may formula, no? So, matatandaan nyo agad na, may formula, Rotter yan. Okay. So, what does this particular formula states, no? Ano ba sinasabi ng formula na to? BP, let me just remind you guys, BP stands for behavioral potential. E stands for expectancy. No, and RV stands for reinforcement value. So ang basic idea lang ng formula na to is BP is equivalent to F, close open parentheses, E and RV. Yun lang po yun. No? Ito kasi mas mas pinahabang formula. Ito. No, but if we will be very basic, let me put it here. If we will be very basic, it will just be like this. Ayan. No, it will just be like that. BP is equivalent to F, close and open parentheses, of E and RV. No? So how do we read? How do we read this particular formula? Paki-take note ito ha. Paki-take note po yung mga sasabihin ko. This formula reads the following. No? Behavior potential is a function of expectancy and reinforcement value. As simple as that. Behavior potential is a function of expectancy and reinforcement value. In other words, no, in a more understandable and layman term, no, the likelihood of a person's exhibiting a particular behavior is a function of the probability that behavior will lead to a given outcome and the desirability of that outcome. Okay? So kindly take note of that, huh? Now, kindly take note of this as well. If expectancy, still in line with the formula, if expectancy and reinforcement value are both high, then the behavior potential will be high. Kapag mataas yung expectancy at RV mo, the behavior potential will be high as well. If either, here's another possibility. If either expectancy or reinforcement value is low, then behavior potentiality will be low. Kindly take note of those possibilities. Okay? Is that clear? Naiintindihan? Nagigets, class? Okay, good. Now, let's proceed. No, let's proceed already. Predicting general behaviors, we have already identified predicting specific. No, ngayon naman general. The basic prediction is too specific to give clues about how a person will generally behave. So these are the generalized expectancies or GE. No, pakitandaan din GE kasi si Rotter mahilig yan sa acronyms. GE, for the general expectancies, their expectations based on similar past experiences that a given behavior will be reinforced. It depends on freedom of movement. When we say freedom of movement, the mean and average expectancy of being reinforced for performing all those behaviors directed toward the satisfaction of some general needs. And as a result, your generalized expectancies includes people's needs as well. So these kinds of drives and needs are also very much included. In line with that, no, since needs are very much included, since your needs are included, dapat alam nyo din yung mga iba't ibang needs according to Rotter, no? We have recognition status, to excel, to achieve, dominance, to control. Yun yung mga dapat yung tandaan ha. Clue words na lang yung sinasabi ko para mas maintindihan nyo sila properly or para mas madali nyo silang ma-absorb. We have the independence needs to be free. Protection dependency, to have others take care of us. No, masyado kang dependent sa protection ng ibang tao, yun. Love and affection, to be warmly accepted by others. And physical comfort, behaviors aimed at securing food, at securing physiological needs, in short. Behaviors aimed at securing physiological needs. Okay? So these are the different needs according to Julian Rotter that are very much included in your generalized expectancies. Okay? Ayan, no? Now, moving forward, we have these three components, three need components. Pakitandaan po itong mga to. Need potential, or NP, the possible occurrence of a set of functionality-related behavior directed toward the satisfaction of a similar goals, meaning to say NP is a group of behaviors and BP is a specific behavior. So yun yung difference. Natatandaan niyo pa yung BP? Class, what does BP mean? Sa formula natin kanina, BP stands for behavior potential good. So NP is the counterpart of BP for general behavior. Okay? Freedom of movement, yung sinabi natin kanina. Freedom of movement is a person's overall expectation for being reinforced for performing those behaviors that are directed towards satisfying some general needs. Ang counterpart ni FM is yung expectation or E. So FM for general behavior, it's FM, no? And for specific behavior, it's expectation or E. Tatandaan. Need values, no? The extent to which people prefer one set of reinforcements to another, defined as the mean preference value as a set of functionality-related reinforcements, and NV is value of a need which gives rise to a set of reinforcements. RV, no? RV, ano ulit yung RV? Class, RV in the specific behavior, what does RV means? Oh, review lang yan. What does RV means? Correct reinforcement value. So everyone, for the specific behavior, it's reinforcement value. And for the general behavior, the counterpart is need value. Okay? So ito lang po yan, yung mga counterparts. Okay? So for the general prediction formula, may panibago na naman kayong formula. NP is equivalent to the function of freedom of movement and need value. No? Similar placement lang din ng formula natin doon sa specific value. Okay? So pakitandaan to ha. So let me repeat ha. NP is need for potential, FM is freedom of movement, NV is need value. Similar placement on the formula with our specific behavior or specific formula, specific prediction formula. Is this clear? Klaro yung mga formula? Ayan, good. Now, how do we measure general expectancies? No? Well, first, we have the what we so-called locus of control, no? Locus of control scale, meaning to say internal and external control of reinforcement. People who believe they can control their own fates will behave differently in many situations compared to those who believe that their destiny is controlled by luck, chance, or powerful others, which is alam naman natin ito, hindi ba? Lalong-lalo na class, no, if you believe that you can control your faith properly, you can control your destination, your goals are dependent on your will and motivation, mag-a-act ka differently as compared to those people na binibase lang yung buhay nila sa destiny. Hindi ba? Binibase lang yung buhay nila sa horoscope. Binibase lang yung buhay nila sa zodiac sign. Ay nako ha, RPM at psychologist kayo in the making ha. Kapag kayo naniniwala sa zodiac sign, sinasabi ko sa inyo. Ay nako ha. Sinasabi ko talaga sa inyo. Itatakwil kayo ng ating profesyon. So please, no? Nanginginig si TOP kapag nagbabasa-basa kayo ng zodiac sa mga horoscope na yan. Okay. High locus of control is pertains to high sense of personal control, attribute success to own faith or to own efforts rather. Kapag naman low yung locus of control mo, meaning to say you are basing things with destiny and faith, no? It explains success in terms of luck and chance kapag low locus of control. So Rotter developed internal external control scale or locus of control scale. So pwede nyo yung gamitin kapag if you want to study the variable of locus of control, you can use that particular scale by Julian Rotter in your studies. We also have interpersonal trust scale. What do we mean by interpersonal trust scale? It measures the extent to which a person expects the world word or promise of another person to be true, no? In short, may tendency na maging gullible ka kasi lagi kang naniniwala sa mga salita at papangako ng ibang tao. Now, the past experiences affects the trust that we provide to our people. If in the past lagi kang niloloko, don't expect your interpersonal trust scale will most likely be low. Kasi lagi kang niloloko lagi kang nabubudol or lagi kang naloloko in general. But in the past, if you are surrounded with trustworthy individuals, expect that your interpersonal trust scale will also be high, no? So interpersonal trust in technicality is a generalized expectancy held by an individual that the word, promise, or oral or written statement of another person or group can be relied on. So kindly take note of that. So yun nga, on the downside, if you have a very high interpersonal trust scale or interpersonal trust score, you have the tendency to be gullible, no? Lalong-lalo na kapag nakakilala ka ng isang tao na laging nangloloko o laging nang prank or whatsoever. Lastly, we have the maladaptive behavior according to Julian Rotter. Rotter defined maladaptive behavior as any persistent behavior that fails to move a person closer to a desired goal, no? Usually the results of unrealistically high goals, di ba, leads to depression. Sinabi natin kanina yan, no? Yung mga taong depressed according to Bandura, they have this tendency to have high goals. Unrealistically or very idealistically high goals, just to correct myself. Next, maladaptive behavior results to inappropriate behavior or inadequate skills or lack of ability, and low expectancies of being able to act successfully. In short, don't believe in their incapability. So in short, kung titignan natin or kung ikukumpara natin to kay Albert Bandura, there's low self-efficacy, no? Maladaptive behavior of Julian Rotter, yes, parang self-efficacy leads to low trust or belief towards one's capability. Or in Albert Bandura's terminology, low self-efficacy. Okay? Is everything clear with Julian Rotter? Klaro tayo with Julian Rotter? Okay. Ngayon, mag-continue na tayo, no? Wag na tayo mag-break because we only have less than 30 minutes left. And we have still Michelle. Meron pa tayong Michelle and meron pa tayong George Kelly. Last two, no? Last two. So let's already proceed with Walter Michel, no? When we say Walter Michel, we're talking about cognitive affective personality system, no? Cognitive affective personality system. Now, Michelle believes that cognitive factors such as expectancies, subjective perceptions, values, goals, interpersonal standards are important in shaping personality. So all of these particular aspects are very much vital, no? Kung mapapansin niyo, mas broad na si Michelle. Napaka-broad na niya. Hindi siya masyado pinag-uusapan sa behaviorism in the undergrad level. Tama ba? Some of you guys are not familiar with Michelle. Naririnig-rinig nyo lang siya. Tama? No? Hindi siya masyado pinag-uusapan in the undergrad kasi si Michelle halo-halo na siya eh. Under siya ng ng behaviorism, pero kung mapansin nyo, yung title ng niya, yung title nung theory niya, cognitive affective, no? So halo-halo na, may cognitivism, may humanistic na nga rin 'yan, no? So halo-halo, it's not purebred behaviorism. Kaya hindi masyado binibigyan ng focus. Kaya kapag behaviorism per se, talagang focus 'yan kay sa PCSO, kay Pavlov, kay Skinner, kay Watson, and so on and so forth, no? Now, in his early theory, Michelle seriously questioned the consistency of personality, but more recently, behavior is also a function, according to Michelle, of relatively stable personal dispositions and cognitive affective lagyan ko lang to ng yan, dash. Cognitive affective processes interacting with a particular situation. Kaya talagang sinabi niya na ang theory niya is cognitive affective theory. Okay? Now, what's the background of cognitive affective personality system according to Walter Mischel? Mischel originally believes that human behavior was mostly a function of the situation. But presently, he has recognized the importance of relatively permanent cognitive affective units. In line with these particular aspects, class, no, Michel's theory continues to recognize the apparent inconsistency of some behaviors. No? So kindly take note of that. Ano ba to? Okay. Oh, there you go. Now, in line with the inconsistency, nakalagay, di ba? Inconsistent behaviors. In line with that, we have the what we so-called consistency paradox. No, lakihan lang natin to. Consistency paradox refers to the observation that although both lay people and professionals tend to believe that behavior is quite consistent, consistency paradox research suggests that it is not. Di ba nga, sinasabi niya nga inconsistent na yung behavior ng mga tao eh. No? Now, some traits are consistent over time. However, there little evidence to suggest that they are consistent from one situation to also another. Dito papasok yung sinasabi how should I say this? Yes, correct, Miss De Jesus. Tahimik sa bahay pero talkative sa peers. When you are with your relatives, you are very how should I say this? Yung parang napaka-meek, no? Di makabasag pinggan kasi kasama mo yung mga relatives mo na hindi mo naman nakita for several years, no? Pero kapag kasama mo yung mga kaibigan mo, lumalabas yung animalistic instincts, no? Lumalabas yung ganung klaseng parte ng katauhan mo, no? So, ang tanong diyan, pagiging plastic ba 'yon? Are you plastic just because, just because these parties, there's an inconsistency or behavior depending on the situation? The answer is no. No, because that is what consistency paradox is actually telling us. No, that yes, our traits, our behavior, our personality is consistent, but it has inconsistencies depending on the situation where we are in. Tatandaan niyo po 'yan. Now, in line with these particular aspects, I wanted you guys to take note of this, no? The person-situation interaction. Behavior is best predicted from an understanding of a person, the situation, and the interaction between the person and situation. Thus, behavior is not the result of some global personality trait, but by persons' perceptions of themselves in a particular situation. This perception interacts with persons' competencies, goals, and interests and values. So ito yung mga bagay-bagay, ladies and gentlemen, that influences us, no? The situation influences and person influences. It affects the individual, which then leads to the inconsistencies in our thoughts, feelings, and also behavior. All right, so let's proceed. May tinatawag tayong cognitive affective personality system. You know, class, this particular theory is very ano to sa akin, close to heart, because this is a theory that I used as my thesis when I was still in LaSalle for my masteral thesis. So I use this theory. Well, just to add. Moving forward, what is CAPS? No? Also called Cognitive Affective Processing System. Accounts for the variability across situation as well as stability within the person. It predicts the person's behavior will change from situation to situation, but in a meaningful manner. Ano yung meaningful manner na yon? No, yun yung tanong. It works on the framework if A, then X. But if B, then Y. If ganito yung situation, then ganito yung behavior natin. Pero if ganito yung situation, mag-iiba ngayon yung behavior natin. It will be Y instead of X. No? So parang ganun siya. Parang ganito lang yan. Kapag kasama ko yung family ko, this is my behavior. But if I'm with my friends, then this is my behavior. No, inconsistencies within a person's behavior are due to stable patterns of variation within a person. No, ano yung variation na yun? Sinabi nga natin kanina, those variation are influenced by the situation and person influences. Therefore, it solves the consistency paradox. For example, Mark was provoked by his wife, he becomes aggressive. But when Mark was provoked by his boss, he did not become aggressive. That is a basic example. No? Same situation, you're provoked, but the person who provoked you are two different individuals, two different situations, yung asawa mo at yung boss mo. Sisinghalan mo ba yung boss mo? Hindi ba parang ang hirap namang maging gano'n, no? Ang hirap namang magalit at magtantrum sa boss mo, knowing the fact that your work will be at risk when you do that, no? So parang ganun lang yon. So in line with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to add this particular information, no, that the CAPS is a theory of personality that emphasizes the importance of situational variables and cognitive qualities of the individual. So when we say situation influences, we're talking about situational variables. And when we say person influences, we're talking about the cognitive variables of the individual on the development of personality. So yun yung dalawang nakakaapekto sa sarili natin. Okay? As you know, it's not only Michelle that developed this. It is developed by Walter Michel and Shoda. I don't... please forgive me with my ignorance. I do not know the first name of Shoda. Please just search ko na nga ngayon. Search na nga natin ngayon. Walter, Michel, and Shoda. Ayun. Yuichi Shoda. There you go. Ayun. Ayun, nasabi rin ni Miss De Jesus. Walter Michel and Yuichi Shoda. No, so silang dalawa yung gumawa ng CAPS, ha, for technicality. This is not only Walter Michel. No. So there are 5 cognitive affective units that influence how we process information. These individual cognitive qualities influence the behavior and how a person interacts with the environment. So ano ba yung 5 individual cognitive qualities na yan? Baka nasa next slide. Tapos dinidiscuss ko na sa inyo. Okay, wala. So yung 5 qualities na to, paki-note na lang ha, paki-note. The 5 qualities, cognitive affective qualities are the following. Encoding, that's 1. When we say encoding, how information is processed, stored, and used. Second is belief and expectations. Belief and expectations, meaning to say, what outcomes an individual expects from their actions. Third, Goals and values. When we say goals and values, life goals and rewards for behavior. Fourth, affect. When we say affect, how a person reacts emotionally. How we react emotionally. And fifth, competencies and self-regulation, meaning to say, general intelligence, knowledge, and abilities. So yan yung 5 cognitive affective factors or units that affects us as individuals. So kindly take note of that. Under the caps, we have prediction, behavior prediction. So Michelle and Shoda use the if and then framework. Personality has a temporal stability as well. So using the if and then framework, I wanted you guys to take note of this. No? In line with that, if personality is stable system that processes information about situations, then it follows that an individual encounter different situations, their behavior should vary across situations, which is diniscuss na nga natin yon. No, that our behavior is dependent on the situation where we are in and also dependent on our personal influences, particularly our cognitive affective units. Kailangan pa ba to? For the caps, we have situation variables or influence of the situation and personal qualities can be determined by observing the uniformity or diversity of people's responses in a given situation. So for examples of these are situation variables are more powerful, meaning to say different people behave in similar manner, people getting emotional while watching a movie. So that's how we behave similarly kahit iba-iba tayo in a similar situation. And next is personal characteristics more powerful when different people with different reactions to a same event. For example, people's reactions to RH bill passing. Hindi ba iba-iba tayo ng reaction noon pero same event lang naman 'yon. Pero kapag nakita nyo na yung mga, for example, nanood kayo ng isang heartwarming movie, and you all cried, that's when you know that situation variable are more powerful over personal characteristics. Next. 5 cognitive affective units. Class, sinabi ko na to ha, diniscuss ko na to kanina. Verbally. Andito pala siya, no? So I apologize, diniscuss ko pa verbally. So andito na siya. So yan yung encoding strategies, competency and self-regulatory strategies. Yan yung 5th na sinabi ko kanina. Expectancies and beliefs. We have goals and values. And we have affective responses or how we respond affectively or emotionally. So moving forward, lastly, we have delay of gratification. What's this? No, refers to the observation that some people, some of the time, will prefer more value delayed gratifications over less values immediate ones. No, so also called deterred gratification and the ability to resist temptation for an immediate reward and wait for the later bigger rewards. So parang ganito lang yan. Huwag kayong mag-party hanggang June 2023. Huwag kayong lumabas, bawal mag-Christmas before June 2023. Walang Valentine's Day, walang ganon before June 2020. After June 2023 kapag lumabas na yung results, doon pala kayo mag-party. Delayed gratification. Ayan. Apply nyo sa sarili nyo, ha? Okay. So that is delayed gratification. So that is Julian Rotter. Is everything sorry, that is Walter Michel, no? Walter Michel / at some point Yuichi Shoda. Is everything clear with Michelle and Shoda? All right. Class is already 11:52. Can I extend kahit 15 minutes lang? Patapusin lang natin si George Kelly. No, tapusin lang natin si George Kelly. Kahit 15 minutes lang ha, please. Sorry po. Okay. So last naman na to, no? So we have George Kelly, Psychology of, nakaka-OC naman ito. Let me just, okay. Psychology of Personal Constructs, no? Personal constructs naman to, George Kelly. Familiar kay George Kelly? Hindi rin masyado, no? Sa undergraduate, hindi rin masyado familiar. Naririnig lang si Kelly? Yes or no? Familiar ba kay Kelly? Kasi pang ano na to eh. Pang yung sina Rotters, sina Kelly, ano na kasi yan eh, mas appropriate sa advanced TOP. No, but if you are familiar, kung naririnig nyo si Kelly, then good. Okay. What's the overview of personal constructs psychology? No, Kelly's theory of personal constructs can be seen as a meta theory or a theory about theories or a theory within a theory. Parang ganun yan. It holds that people anticipate events by the meaning or interpretations that they place on those particular events, no? And personal constructs are the ways of interpreting and explaining events which predicts a particular behavior. So it mainly focuses on how we actually see things, on what are the values and meanings that we attach on a particular situation that actually affects how we see and how we view a particular event. No, so ganun siya. It is a theory of people's construction of events or people's inquiry into the world. Kaya mapapansin ninyo at i-expect ninyo that when we see a particular phenomena, no, we have different opinions about it. Because that is how George Kelly explains it. We have a different value and different meaning attached to the same situation, and as a result, it produces different opinions and effects as well. Now, Kelly's philosophical position. Kelly believes that people construe events according to their personal constructs rather than reality. No, person as scientist. People generally attempt to solve everyday problems in much the same fashion as scientists. That is, they observe, ask questions, formulate hypotheses, infer conclusions, and predict future events. Meron din naman tayong tinatawag na scientist as person, no? Because scientists are people, their pronouncements should be regarded with the same skepticism as any other data. Every scientific theory can be viewed from an alternate angle, and every competent scientist should be open to changing his or her theory on that particular aspect. Now, kung mapapansin ninyo, saan ba natin to pwedeng i-apply? Ito saan ba natin to pwedeng i-apply? Pinaka-recent lang, no? The recent election. Hati-hati, no? Hati-hati tayo ng opinion, hati-hati tayo ng political party. May for example, yung pinaka basic na BBM versus Lenny ano ba yun? Yung surname ni Lenny Robredo. Sorry, no. Nag-ano ako doon. Nag-reboot yung isipan ko noon. No, okay, nag-reboot ako doon. Lenny Robredo and Bongbong Marcos. Hindi ba? Mapapansin ninyo, may mga tao regardless I do not want to identify kung pulahan kayo or pinklawan or whatsoever. This is just an example, no? Kung mapapansin ninyo, may mga tao na nagre-reason out, bakit dapat si Lenny Robredo ang iboto? May mga tao din naman na nagre-reason out, bakit si BBM yung dapat iboto? But if you know, if you have witnessed, if you are politically inclined, no? If you have witnessed and if you have observed, no matter how much effort we provide in actually persuading people to vote Lenny or persuading people to vote for BBM, may mga tao na hindi nagpapatinag, no? Bakit? It's because they see an event not based on reality, not based on facts, but based on their personal constructs. Hindi ba? So that's what Kelly's philosophical position is all about. No, I wanted you guys to take note of that. 'Di ba? Yung iba sinasabihan na sinasampal na ng katotohanan. These are facts, these are news. Ganyan-ganyan na sila, 'di ba? Pero bakit todo pa rin yung suporta mo sa taong ito? Ito na yung katotohanan, 'di ba? Ayaw mo pa ring maniwala, ayaw mo parang you are closing your eyes and your ears even though these are already the facts. This happened already in the history. Pero ayaw pa rin. Why? Because they do not want to believe in reality. They only believe on their personal constructs. Okay? So that is Kelly's point of view. Now, constructive alternativism. What is that? Different people construe reality in different ways. No? Yan yung sinasabi ko sa inyo na isang event, iba-iba tayo ng opinion. The same person is capable of changing his or her view of the world. Capable naman pala. Yun naman daw pala yun, no? We are capable. Parang ganito lang yan, no? Scientist as person. Given the fact that one particular event may be viewed in an alternate angles, therefore, ideally, dapat we are open. Let me highlight that one. We should be open to changing our theory at some point. No? Kahit papaano. The same person is capable in changing his or her view of the world. A person's interpretation of the event is more important than the event themselves. Kindly take note of this, ha? Kindly take note. Facts and events do not dictate conclusions. Yan. No, rather, they carry meaning for people to discover. So, dito papasok yung sinasabi nating same example. Facts and events, they do not dictate conclusions. Kaya pala may mga ganon, sinasabi natin, kahit andyan na pala yung facts, baliwala lang sa'yo eh. No? Baliwala lang pala sa'yo yung katotohanan, yung facts. No? It doesn't matter to you kahit nakalagay yan sa balita, kahit nakalagay yan sa textbooks, kahit nakalagay yan sa history books natin. Baliwala lang pala sa'yo yun. Because what matters to you is the meaning you attach to that particular fact or event. No? Kung para sa iyo, nakalagay na nga siya sa history book, pero para sa iyo kasinungalingan siya, because that is based on your personal perspective, then wala tayong magagawa doon. No? It's literally like talking to a person blindsidedly. No? So kindly take note of that. Anticipation is both the push and pull of the psychology of personal constructs. It is the future that tantalizes man, not the past. Kindly take note of that, no? In line with the personal constructs, I wanted you guys to take note of this. People look at their worlds through templates that they create and then attempt to fit over the realities of the world. Ayan, ang laking ano na to, no? Ang laking significance na to if we are to apply it in the recently conducted election. No, we have our own template of what is reality. And our own template of what is reality, pinagpipilitan natin na yon ang totoo, na yon ang tama. No, even though it's not. No, these templates or transparent patterns are called personal constructs, which believe shapes our behavior. So yun pala yun, sabi ni Kelly. No, now. Basic postulates, what are these? When we talk about basic postulates, class, I wanted you guys to take note of these. A person's processes are psychologically channeled by the ways in which the person anticipates events. It assumes that human behavior is shaped or directed by the way people anticipate the future as well. People continue, kaya nga 'di ba? Tingnan niyo ito ha. That's why, there are so many people sa halalan, sa recently conducted election. Pangako ng pangako yung mga politician. No? Puros pangako. It's very futuristic, kaya nga siya pangako kaya nga siya promise. Kapag binoto niyo ako, bababaan ko yung, ano yung sinabi ni BBM, bababaan ko yung presyo ng bigas. Hindi ba? Ayan, 2 pesos ang bigas. 20, ayan. 20 pesos ang presyo ng bigas. Bababaan ko yan. It's very futuristic. Very futuristic. No? Now, in line with our discussion, look at this. People's behavior, people's current behavior are shaped by how we foresee and anticipate the future. People are anticipating for a future na mababa ang presyo ng bigas. Therefore, we vote BBM. No? So ganun ang nangyayari. No, nagigets nyo when we apply it? Nagigets when we apply? Nagigets yung application sa reality sa current situation natin? Okay, good. Next. People continuously reach out to the future through the window of the present, no? Present view of the future. Kaya sa recently conducted election, puros promises because these are just windows. These are just glimpse of what can happen in the future if we vote for this particular politician. No, so we uphold those promises, we uphold those views of the future, which basically shapes our current behavior. Oh, next. Ito, unique to kay Kelly ha, the 11 supporting corollaries. 11 supporting corollaries. Unique yan kay Kelly ha, pakitandaan po itong mga to. Lakihan lang natin, sorry. Para mas makita ng lahat. Okay. Construction corollary. Although no two events are exactly alike, we construe similar events as if they are the same. No, for example, pare-parehong manloloko ang mga lalaki. No, parang you are generalizing. That is construction corollary. No, people interpret future on the basis of the occurrence of the replication. Same lang yung mga lalaking yan, parang ganon. So that is an example of construction corollary. Because of what happened to you, you generalize everything. Another one, individuality corollary. What's this? Because people have different experiences, they can construe the same event in different ways. For example, the 9/11 attack. Do you know the 9/11 attack? No? Do you know that? No, sa ibang bansa, sa Amerika, iba-iba tayo ng karanasan, therefore iba-iba din tayo ng interpretation. In the 9/11 attack, there are people who sees that or interpreted that as a terrorism for Americans. But there are also some people who sees that as success for jihad Muslims. Iba-iba ng experiences, iba-iba ng construction ng meaning. So that is individuality. Okay? Next, organization corollary. People organize their personal constructs in a hierarchical system with some constructs in a subordinate position and others subordinate to them. Example, people see being stupid, unemployment, financial troubles as bad. But those people who are seen as intelligent, good at their job, buying a new car, they are good. So that is organization corollary. Next, dichotomy corollary. People construe events in an either or manner that is good or bad. No, people attribute contrasting qualities to things that are like the color blue, which is light, or blue or dark blue on that particular aspect. Now let's put it into an example para mas makita ninyo. Let's say, for example, dichotomy corollary. Either you're pro same-sex marriage or anti. That's it. No. If you're pro, then you are accepted. If you're against, then you are discriminated and labeled as homophobic. Dichotomy, dichotomous. Ganun lang siya. No? Don't confuse it with organization. Doon sa example ko kanina. Because in organization, you organize people. No? You organize them. Itong mga taong ito na bad at na stupid people, mga tao na mangmang, mga tao na unemployed, they are all categorized and labeled as bad. Yung mga tao na matatalino, cum laude, buying a new car, buying a new home, they are good people, organized as good. So I hope you don't confuse organization with dichotomy. Next. Lakihan lang natin to. Choice corollary, what's that? When we say choice, people tend to choose the alternative in a dichotomized construct that they see as extending the range of their future choices. So when we say choice corollary, choice working or getting a board license. Choice of working or getting a board license. Ano pipiliin ninyo? Ngayon, after graduation, would you choose to work or review for the board exam? No? Sa dalawang yon, which will give you a better future in life? Magtatrabaho ka kaagad or review for the board exam and get your license? It really depends on the person, hindi ba? It depends. Pero kung ako yung tatanungin ninyo, I choose for license. I choose to review first and get my license, because securing my license will give me the opportunities that I cannot receive if I do not have my license and if I just work right away. Nagigets? So in choice corollary, you choose the opportunity or the option that gives you more range in terms of future. Next, range corollary. Constructs are limited to a particular range of convenience. That is, they are not relevant to all situations. So convenience ang pinag-uusapan natin dito. For example, independence. Independence. Within our range when choosing a partner, or out of range when choosing to keep a child. No? So at that particular aspect, no, we're talking about range corollary. Next, experience corollary. People continually revise their personal constructs as the result of their experiences. No? For example, changing the thought that manloloko lahat ng lalaki will be changed. Yung ganong thinking, manloloko lahat ng lalaki. It will change when you meet your future husband. Hindi ba? Initially, yung thinking mo manloloko lahat ng lalaki. All men are trash. But that kind of thinking will suddenly change when you met a very loyal, very hardworking, tall, dark, and handsome guy. No, magbabago yon. So that is experience corollary. Ay, kapagod. Next, next, modulation corollary. No, when we say modulation corollary, only permeable constructs lead to change. Ano ba to? No, concrete constructs resist modification through experience. So yung permeable, yung changeable constructs lang daw yung pwedeng mag-change. Example, no? Belief that women are inferior to men. No? The belief that women are inferior to men don't change if it's impermeable. No? The question now is, would the attribute that women's successes to luck or chance on that particular note, would that change? Yung belief ba, o yung construct ba, yung thinking ba that women are inferior to man, is that something permeable or not? Because if it's permeable, therefore, that is something that can be modulated. That is something that can change. No? So kindly take note of that. No? The last set of corollary, no, or corollaries are the fragmentation corollary. What do we mean by fragmentation, class? No? People's behavior can be inconsistent because their construct systems can readily admit incompatible elements. What is this? For example, no? We may want our child to be independent, yet we want to care for her and monitor her actions. So that is fragmented, no? People's behavior can be inconsistent. Gusto mo maging independent yung anak mong babae, but at the same time, you want to always secure and always monitor your child na babae. That is fragmented, inconsistent yung gusto mo. So that's it, no? That's fragmentation corollary. Next, commonality corollary. When we say commonality corollary, these are our personal constructs that tends to be similar to the construction system of other people to the extent that we share experiences with them. So we share similar, consistent constructs with other people. Example, Muslims and Christians, they are different, ha? Muslims and Christians, magkaibang grupo, are alike, no? They are alike. They believe that faith involves doing good to others because doing good fosters harmony. So they are different, but they have that similar construct or similar belief. So that's commonality corollary. Hindi ba? O another one, last, sociality corollary. No? People are able to communicate with others, with other people because they can construe those people's constructions. They feel that they can relate, no? They can communicate because they can construe those people's constructions. The role is to refer to a pattern of behavior that stems from people's understandings of the constructs of other people. The core role of society or sociality corollary is this: to give us a sense of identity, define themselves, who they are, no, and so on and so forth. For the peripheral role, it's less central on our self-concept. All right? I'll give you an example para mas maintindihan ninyo. Sociality corollary. Christians accept monogamy. Monogamy, no? Meaning to say, isa lang yung papakasalan mo, 1:1. Sa Muslims, they accept polygamy. They accept polygamy. Meaning to say, allowed sila, yung mga kalalakihan, allowed sila to marry several women. As long as kaya nilang panindigan, kaya nilang buhayin, hindi ba? In their cultural and traditional beliefs, they allow polygamy. Now, if you are a Christian and you get married, you assume a role of a faithful monogamous husband. So that is sociality corollary. People are able to communicate with other people because they can construe those people's constructions. We understand people's constructions. That's why we can communicate properly with them without argumentation. No? May mga ganito, for example, I support a particular politician. May friends din ako that they support another politician na hindi ko gusto. But I understand and I respect their belief system. I respect their choice. Therefore, we still stay as friends. No? We still stay as friends because we respect each other and we understand each other's construction. No? That is sociality corollary. May mga tao na hindi nagagawa yung sociality corollary dahil hindi nila naiintindihan yung sarili-sarili nilang construction. For example, isang Lenny supporter, hindi niya maintindihan yung kaibigan niyang BBM supporter, and vice versa. Yung BBM supporter, hindi rin niya naiintindihan yung construction ng Lenny supporter. Therefore, nag-aaway sila. That's not sociality corollary. They cannot communicate properly because they cannot understand and construe each other's construction. Gets? Naiintindihan po ba yung buong 11 supporting corollaries? Naiintindihan na? Okay, good. Last slide. Thank God. As for the last slide, I wanted you guys to take note of the abnormal development, no? According to George Kelly, 4 common elements in most human disturbances. First is threat, the perception that one's basic constructs may be drastically changed. Your constructs or constructions are threatened. That's a possibility to produce abnormal development. Next is fear, which requires an incidental rather than a comprehensive restructuring of one's construct system. Next is anxiety, the recognition that one cannot adequately deal with the new situation. Hirap mag-adjust, hirap mag-adapt doon sa new construction. That's anxiety. And lastly, guilt, defined as a sense of having lost one's core role structure. All right? So all of these particular elements are the 4 elements, human disturbances. So when you experience this, it may develop abnormal development. So ano ba yung normal people according kay George Kelly? Competent scientists who test reasonable hypotheses, objectively view the results, and willingly change their theories when the data warrants it. So this is also applicable to regular individual. If you are open to changes because you know for a fact that data warrants these changes in your construction, you are free to do so, you are open to do so, therefore you are a normal person, a healthy person. Pero unhealthy ka, according to George Kelly, if you are incompetent scientists or incompetent individuals who test unreasonable hypotheses, rejects or distorts legitimate results and data, and refuse to amend outdated theories. Or if you do not want to change your construction, your belief system, kahit alam mo naman or kahit sinasabihan ka na ng facts na mali ang ginagawa mo o mali yung belief system mo, pero ayaw mo pa rin siyang baguhin, you are still blindedly no, blinded by these particular irrational and baseless belief system. Therefore, according to George Kelly, you are unhealthy. Class, that ends that ends behaviorism. No, okay. Now, is everything clear with George Kelly? Klaro kay George Kelly? Okay. Class, let me just go back in this, no? Kung mapapansin ninyo, natapos na natin yung day 1, day 2, day 3 agendas hanggang kay George Kelly. The other theories, Sheldon Stevens, Boss Plomin, Anderson, Chen McAdams, and Osherman, Lieberman, utang ko to sa inyo. Di ba you will be having your mock exam for advanced TOP, no? So during the rationalization of the mock exam, doon ko ito i-discuss. Again ha, during the rationalization of the mock exam, doon ko siya i-discuss. Itong si Sheldon Stevens, Boss Plomin, Anderson, Chen McAdams, and Osherman and Lieberman. All right? So these are additional contemporary. These are not grand theories, but these are contemporary theories about TOP that is more fitted, more fitted with for advanced TOP talaga to. So para sa mga RPM natin, not necessarily na dapat nyo silang malaman, it can be an additional learning, no, dahil mas may emphasis to sa advanced TOP sa mga RPsy takers natin. All right, so utang ko to sa inyo. So with that being said, is everything clear, class? Everything clear with all of the things that we have discussed for today? All right, so I'm assuming it's already 12:19. I do apologize for the extension. Thank you very much.